Friends, Brian here for Yes You Can Play Guitar, and it's absolute an honor and a joy today to talk to the one and only Morris Hayes, keyboards for Prince and New Power Generation. And also, we always have our good friend of the channel, the Solitary Adventurer, all the way across the pond. Thanks for joining us, Chris. All right, I'll let you start off.
Okay, thanks again, Morris. This is going to be fun. It's always
Yes,
great
indeed.
to get any time with you. So what we've been doing, Brian and I, is sort of approaching these interviews as an interview with you and about your life, and then obviously the Prince connection that is sort of something that we want to cover. It just comes about naturally. So I'm curious, how did music come into your life?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on here on your show and everything, and appreciate it. I grew up in the church, man, and music has always been around me, since I'm a kid, and just being at church and, church music and everything. And then my mom sang at church, and she wanted to play piano, so my dad bought her a piano, and, when we were small. And so once we got in our new house and everything, we got a piano, and she would play on it and press on it. And so, I was just always able to like kind of go and bang on it and mess around with it. And then things just started to get more and more gradually more into it as I was, going to church and kind of like started kind of playing a little bit and then just, kind of developing into like playing at church. And I was pretty terrible, but over time, they don't worry about it too much at church. It's just the willingness to participate and do your little part. And it just as time went on, it just become more. I became more interested, and I was really into art, and I actually got a scholarship to university for art because I like to draw out. The idea was I wanted to make my own comic books. I was really big time into like comic books and Mad Magazine and things like this, and I wanted to make my own comic books and everything. But as I got into college, I used to have to cross through the music department a lot, and I would always be late because I would stop at these various pods and hear musicians like either wailing on sax or playing the piano. There's a piano in every room, but some people come in there and they put their guitar and amp in there and they play, and I just stop and peep through they got these little sliver windows, and I look through the window, they'd be like, wow, they're getting it in, man. And I just was every day, man, on my way to Arkansas, I just had to cross through there. And I just more and more just started leaning. And I finally got in a college band and, and got in there. I wasn't that great, but I had a bunch of equipment that I could kind of collected. And so that was kind of my way in. And it just kind of morphed into that. It was a process, but things just started leaning more away from art and more into the musical side.
So I've got about 4 different avenues that I'd like to cover there. I'm sure Brian's the same.
Sure.
So the first one is the art side of things. Is that something that you've carried on with in the background throughout your career?
It's one of those things where if you don't lose it, you lose it kind of thing if you don't use it. I've always had an eye for art and an eye for like kind of design, and that kind of helps in music, when you're looking at things, and so I've always managed to keep that just kind of like riding on my shoulder. It's like one of those kind of things that I like. Prince used to tell me, so I would come up with all of these different names and different types of things. He told me, he said, you're really good at like making up names and doing different things like that, and so it just was always an artistic side, and that I always tried to maintain and utilize wherever it was available. You know what I mean? So that was always cool.
I have a question about the art aspect of it.
Yep.
Marvel or DC?
Man, growing up, and that's the thing. I was a cross platform. I was just like, right now, if you ask me Mac or PC, I'll say Mac. But back then, I was both. Because Superman was like, of course, for every kid back in the day. I mean, brother, I'm 60, so it wasn't like the proliferation of comics like it is today. It's so many things. It was just like there was a few. There was Batman, there's Superman, there's Spider-Man, and the Hulk, and it's like, And so for me, I'm an old school. I go back to the main cats, and then all of the other additions as they would come. Bro, all of my money, all of my allowance, I had the crazy, I would be a millionaire, brother. I would be a millionaire today had I kept those comic books, had I had any concept that this could be worth money, bro, I would be a billionaire probably by now. I had comic books stacked up. Like my mom was like, bro, like what is all of this crap? Like they're everywhere. Because I would like Mad Magazine, all of the different I loved all of them, man. And that's where all of my time went. And then I try to draw my own. I even made my own comic, like Pony Boy and all of these different things that I created. So, but I started out DC, man, and I got into Marvel because of like Spider-Man and like some of the other ones. But I was a DC cat starting out, man.
Before I forget, I just want to ask Morris, what was your first keyboard? Your first electric keyboard that you got?
My first electronic keyboard I got, and this is really dope, man. I got a Moog satellite.
I knew you were going to say Moog. I knew it. I knew it.
Yeah. It was a Moog satellite, and it was like, that was awesome. And then the other two to come after that would be like the cornerstone. The next one was a Fender Rhodes 88 stage, and then I got a Farfisa professional that Sly Stone used to play. It wasn't Sly Stone's keyboard, but it's one like Sly used to use. Like It's Farfisa. My grandma bought it at a flea market, man, at like $50 at a flea market. And I had no idea what I had, but it's the same one. Like I was watching Sly and the Family Stone on something, me and Prince, and Sly came on and he was playing. I said, "Oh, I got one of them." Prince like, "You got one of those?" He said, "Where is it?" I said, "It's in Chicago." He said, "You got to go get it. You got to go get it." And somebody had stolen it. When I went to go to get it, I had my the Farfisa and a thing called a Freeman string symphonizer.
Okay.
Freeman, and it's a rare keyboard, and I regret greatly that I left it in that storage because it was gone when I got back to Chicago to go collect. Both of them were gone. Somebody broke in and stole them, and I don't even know for how long they had been stolen. But that Freeman was crazy, man. It's like it had a unique sound. I've never heard anything else like it. I don't know of any models of it that's out. I have to check around because it had a very interesting. It was like kind of like an ARP Omni, but it just was kind of brown and boxy. Wood. It was like wood. It was crazy, man. And
yeah,
I wish to God, because that would be so. I would be rich because it's so rare.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my first one, was a Moog, man.
Neat.
And I always loved it.
Did you ever try any other instruments other than keyboards and piano?
Yeah, I mean, I mess with drums a little bit. I practice. I have a drum set. I have like 3 drum sets now, and I can make a beat, but I'm not proficient like enough to play a drum gig at it. But I would play drums with Prince one time when he wanted to groove, and just with me and him around, he wanted to play bass or play guitar. I just put a beat. And the only problem with Prince is, man, he jammed for like 3 hours, man. I'm like, bro, I'm not a real drummer. I can't. I get bored. Number one, I get bored, and number two, I'm not that great. And Prince is like, man, he's intense, man. So he's serious business. I pissed him off like one time at his house, man. He was really mad because I just kept getting bored and I kept changing up the groove, man. And he just put his guitar. He said, "Morris, he said, if you're gonna play, man, respect the instrument, man. Like, do it right, man, and just play the groove. And I'm like, bro, I'm not, I'm not a drummer. I'm not. But he was deadly serious. He was deadly serious, man, about like respecting the instrument. If you're gonna play it, play it. If you're
Yeah.
not, then don't. I'll figure something else out. I'll play drums, but if you're gonna play, man, play. That's the way he was. He just wanted to, whatever you picked up, you want to do to play to do the best you could on it all the time, man. All the time. It ain't no jacking around at any point. It's like play it like you mean it and do it right.
Yeah.
That's where he was with it.
Yeah, that puts me in mind of something that Levi's teacher said about
Mm.
wishing Prince good luck before they went on stage. And Prince sort of snapped at him, like there ain't no such thing as good luck. We've put the practice in.
Yeah,
That's why we're going to be good.
man, I can't believe Levi told him that, man, because Levi ought to know better than that one. As soon as you said it, I just went, he said, what? I'm like, oh, God, no, not the Prince. Yeah, Prince would correct you on that one, man, for sure.
Speak to that. What was it about him? Is it just a work ethic, the Midwestern work ethic, or is it something more?
I, 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 I didn't grow up in the Midwest, so I'm not really sure about the Midwestern work ethic. What I do know is there's a Prince work ethic that this cat was an anomaly, and I think, but only in the sense that I've since I've been around Prince, I've met a lot of other celebrities, and they share a common thing, a common thread between anybody that's at the top of their game. There's a very similar line of things that goes through them, like the James Browns and the Whitney Houston's and the Stevie Wonders, and all of those people. They share a common thread, man. They all are perfectionists in terms of they want to be the best at everything that they're doing, and and when you want to be the best, that means you have a work ethic. You work longer than anybody. You work harder than anybody. Like everything is a detail that has to be addressed, and all of those types of things. And they're obsessed with the amount of time that they put in, and the people that work with them. They demand the best out of all of the people that surround them. I don't care what part of it is, whether it was music, whether you worked in wardrobe, whether you worked in accounting, whether you worked in wherever it was. If you were working with us, you were at the height of your game. I don't care if you were the freaking janitor. You had like everybody had a level of quality that they had to operate at in order for him to be cool with having you around because he wanted everybody to hold up their end of the deal, man. And that was important. He told me one time, and we were just like playing these house parties, man. So many house parties. Like we turned down like really high paying gigs just because he just wanted to jam at the house. I kind of had a bad night one night and it just messing around and just hit a few dog notes, man. And Prince was like, he cleaned my clock, brother, and was like, hey, man, 10 or 10,000. Every show is the same, man. We do the best. I don't care if it's 10 people here or 10,000. You play the same show, man. Period. There ain't no slack, because everything you do, the last thing you do is how you judge. And if you come out here playing notes of dog notes, man, and technical issues and stuff, he said, man, people remember that, man. And it's just once it's out there, it's in the ether. And he don't like it to be anything less than the best you got. That's just the way he was.
I heard you say in other conversations about you knew your place in the room or you knew your place in the band.
Sure.
Now, having been like on a much
Yeah.
smaller level, a regional musician, I get that. I understand it. So that tells me a lot
Mhm.
about you were very easy to work with and you had a good personality and you're very professional. But that knowing your place, do you think some people, we don't have to mention names, but do you think that's something that you've seen people
Sure.
struggle with?
Absolutely, brother. The two biggest things that I see people that struggle with, especially with Prince, is number one, you don't know your place in the room, and you don't know the guy that you're working for. Those are two big issues and two big things. Prince. I'm a man, bro. I grew up listening to as a kid before I even really could play, man. I had a gift unrealized. You know, I liken it to like, Superman before you had superpowers and stuff. It's just like, you could do certain things other kids couldn't do. When I would put on I lived out here in the woods, man, and in this very house that I'm in now is where I grew up. And we were out in the middle of nowhere, brother, and we didn't have like AM radio was sucked for the R&B station, but the FM stations that played rock and roll was clear as a bell. And I used to have these headphones. I put these headphones on, man, and I just be like grooving, man. And my brother was a DJ, so whenever he'd buy albums, or I'd go or go in a record store, I would pick up albums and read credits to all of the songs I like Steely Dan and like the Led Zeppelin and all of these different ones, Jimi Hendrix, all the different ones that I would listen to on the rock and roll side, Supertramp, all of these people. I would pick up the thing and read the credits. And what I kept seeing was these familiar names that kept showing up on everybody's records, like Greg Fillinganes and like, Al Schmidt and like all of these cats who were like engineers. And because I just wanted to know like who, and then it just started being like, wait a minute, this guy's playing on this, but he's playing on Stevie Wonder, he's playing on Michael Jackson, he's playing over here. You got all of these cats that, like Donald Fagen would use, like these session guys that are just like, and then I'd see Jerry Hay, and I'd see like all of these cats that's like on these records, and then all of these people. And so that was a big deal for me. And so when I got to like to the Prince thing, I had already like understood a lot of the people and a lot of the stuff, and I was like a fan of these people, like and so I understood that I was not Chick Corea, I was not Herbie Hancock, I was more on a technical side. When I got into music, I was more of a geek in terms of like synthesis and stuff, and that's where my love kind of fell. Barbarella is a technical. He can play, man. He can read music. You put a sheet of music in front of him, man, he goes. It's like pow, pow, pow. Renato Neto, same, pow, pow, pow. These kids been reading music since they're 5 years old. I didn't do it that way. I kind of got into music. I'm a late bloomer. I got into like college. A lot of people from my high school, I'm from a small town, man. And so, of course, people start seeing you on TV and they're like going, wait a minute, Morris Hayes, the dancer, the dancing bulldog. They're like, yeah, he played with Prince. Like, play what? Like, it's like the dancing dude. He with Prince. So it would be this crazy, like, well, how did that work? Where did that come from? Because I was a late bloomer and I got into it. But I got into when Prince first had me doing this thing with this band for the Glam Slam for his club. I remember him asking me. I had 2 keyboards, man, and a couple of things in the rack, and he was like, "Man, how are you getting that sound? Like you got this big sound, but you only got a couple of things over there." And I just said, "Oh man, I just know how these 2 keyboards really well, and I know how to layer stuff. I know how to, play these chords." And he just was like freaked out that I knew how to get, number one, that I had attention to detail when it came to recreating sounds and the technology. And I got into that. And that was the piece that interested him in me. Is like I came from church, I had a gospel kind of flavor, but I also knew this technology. One of my greatest claims to fame to this day that is my best, and it's not even something that everybody knows, it's just to me. I know it. Is Prince came to my rehearsal with my group, and we're playing 2 of his songs in our set. We playing cover stuff. So we playing the Time and whoever else we're playing. But we had 2 Prince songs in the set. And I had a sampler that was dedicated to when I put my finger on a key and stepped on the sustain pedal, I had drum loop. And I put these 2 drum loops on the Prince songs. 17 Days, I put a European group, TKA. I put a loop under his track and it blew his mind. He was like, whoa, 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 stop the press. He went back and told Levi, and Levi called me and said, man, what did you do? And I'm like, what you talking about? He says, man, Prince came in here and says, stop the presses. Morris is over there playing our songs, and he's got loops under our songs. He's got these tracks under, And he says, we got to do that, but use our own tracks to put under our music. I just took some other people's beats and then put 17 Days on the top of it and blew his mind, man. That is the way he did it for the rest of his career. From that point on, he said, he says, I don't want Tommy or Rosie doing it. He said, put it in Michael Bland stuff, and so that he can play it, and so he can just put that in the drum rig. I played it because I would DJ it. I would like take the sample and like, and he was like, oh my God, that's crazy. And decided that that's what he was going to do. And from that day forward, even before I got in the band, they started playing loops. His own, he'd go in the studio and take the beats for, what was the one that I really loved? Dorothy Parker. Take that so he could put every 4-bar clip of all of those songs in Michael's drums, and then Michael could trigger them on a pad and trigger them on a foot switch, and then now it sounds like the record. That's one of the things. And then Prince did that until he was gone.
Yeah, and he had that piano set up, didn't he, where you could trigger those very same samples off the keys.
Yeah, I put all of those samples. I chopped all of those up and put them in his keyboard. And I had a gold keyboard that I did the same thing with the Open Labs keyboard that I had. That I put all of those samples on buttons on this thing, and I had them at his house. And all he had to do was just hit the button. I had a 10-minute track for each one, and on each track I put an ending to where, like, once it got to the end, if he decided like he wanted to jam a long time, I told him, I said, Prince, I set this up where each one of these tracks are going to run for 10 minutes. So if you just get happy, and it's going to be a swell. Once you hear that swell, you got 4 bars before the bomb explosion happens. So no matter where you are on the stage, when you start hearing that, he knows where the end's going to be, and he's counting bars, and he'll finish it just like he planned it that way. That was just the setup. And I put him on his keyboard that way. All he had to do was hit the note and hold a sustain patch. And then I also did splits so that I'd put a clav on top so that he could play a clav and it wouldn't hold, but the sample would hold. Just by you can set the keyboard up to split to where only this part down here sustains when you hold the pedal, and this part up here does not. So you can jam on top of your groove. And man, it was like,
yeah. Well, that explains a lot of what I've heard.
And so to get back to your statement, understanding my place is that I don't have to solo. I don't have to get a solo. Tommy did that very well. Renato did that very well. But he would give me some occasionally. But that wasn't like my thing. Michael Bland used to tell me all the time, he said, I hate soloing. But when he did it, he killed it. He was, I'm like, you don't like the solo and you solo like that? I mean, I'm like, God dang, that's crazy, bro. But that's what he said. He said, I don't like doing solos. Michael's a pocket drummer. He's all about timing. He's about like clock. He is a clock. He's like Bernard Purdy. His whole thing is like chop, chop like this. I used to have John Blackwell tell me, like, I'm gonna whoop Michael Bland. I'm gonna whoop him. I said, Black, you will never whoop Michael Bland unless you figure out how to come back on the one and your time and between tricks, biting the sticks and flirting. I said, all that look cool. I give you kudos, but you will never whoop Michael Bland until your tempo is on the money. That's what Michael Bland was about. And that was my little bro. And I just tell him the truth because that's the reality of it. And more than anything else, your job is, like as Bernard Purdy would say, my job is to keep time, brother. That's what my job is. And that's what your job is, to keep time. And so I said, that's where you will fall down when you try to whoop Michael Bland, because he gonna always come on the one. There was a song that Michael did that Prince said, okay, Michael, I want you to play everywhere but the one. Don't hit the 2, hit the 3, 4, but don't hit on the one. And it's called Ass Whooping in a Trunk. And if you want to get your head twisted, go find that song, and Michael Bland will make you throw up your lunch meat. I'm telling you right now, it's crazy.
Sorry, quick one. Were you ever tempted to sample Michael so that when Prince said you jump on the drums, you could maybe trigger a loop and freak him out?
Yeah, well, what it is, Mike and Sonny made these discs, smooth ass grooves and funky loops, that they did, and that has Sonny and Mike. Because one day, we were at rehearsal, man, and I came in, and Sonny and Mike were just trying to trick each other and grooving, and just killing, just playing stuff like, and they were just right, and I'm like, I'm sitting there and I'm standing at the door, and I'm like, oh my God, these dudes. Prince walks in, right? I'm standing at the back door. I just stand in the door and just stop at the door and just listen to him. And then about a couple of, maybe a minute later, Prince walks in. He said, "What's happening?" And I said, "Man," I said, "Sonny and Mike up here, man, trying to trick each other, and they just, it's crazy, man. This doesn't make any sense." I said, "We should make a record." Prince goes, "Yeah, we should make a record." He turns around. There's a phone on the back wall at the sound stage that's like right by the doors when you walk in, to the left. He goes over to the phone, calls Ray in the studio and those guys and Magoo and all these guys. He says, "Get some guys over, come set up all the gear in Studio A. We'll make a record. Go get some tape from the vault, and we're gonna we'll make." Just like that, bro. And people start moving. Just like that. That's Exodus. That's that record that came out of that. Because I told him, I said, "Man, this is crazy, man. Sonny and Mike, just stupid. They just in here, they trying to trick each other out the groove, and they can't even do it. They can't trick themselves out of timing and just because they're just reading minds. These two dudes are just locked to a point that it's just like." And Prince said, "Okay, so then yeah, we'll make a record just like that, bro." And then just make a call, and then a bunch of people start running around like ants, like to fix what he said. So there's a crew now moving all the equipment out. We just in the middle of just doing that thing. They just said, "Okay, tear it all down, move it into Studio A." And I'm like, God dang, man, this is crazy.
So we have a really awesome Patreon community. There's a lot of really intense Prince fans there. It's a wonderful community. I have a lot of questions from them for you. I'm going to throw in from time to time as we're talking.
Sure.
Since we're on this topic, I'm going to ask you a question from a Patreon. We have U.S. Agent. He says to me, he said, "Who did Morris prefer as a drummer, Michael Bland or John Blackwell?" I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, here's the thing. I never like to really get into to comparisons and things like that, because I love all of my bandmates,
Yeah.
and they both had different things that made them what they were. Both of them are great drummers. Again, I like Michael Bland. I always tell the truth. I like Michael Bland because Michael paid attention to tempo, and with Prince, that's everything. Michael's tempo was just like, I asked him to play a 95 BPM beat one time. I just say, "Mike, play 95," and I turned on the tempo. It it was 95, bro. Now,
Wow.
Michael and Sonny both have perfect pitch. They have perfect pitch. All right, I get that they got perfect pitch. Prince didn't have perfect pitch, but he had like incredible relative pitch. You could play if you played an A, he knew where C was. Now, if you played the A, that was his reference key, and now Prince knew where C was. Great reference pitch. But Mike and Sonny had this thing; they could just tell you what pitch a fart was in, because I saw him do it once. And Sonny said it's almost in B flat. It's like right between B and B flat. And I just said, "Bro, this is crazy. Like, this is crazy." But Michael was that about tempo. That was important to me, playing samples live and without a sequencer, because we didn't use tracks. We played to a click, to a loop, a sample loop. And that had to match up everything. And then there was a few songs that did not have a loop that Mike had to know what that tempo was. Because if he didn't, my samples wouldn't match. And that is incredible to me. John was an extraordinarily great show drummer. He had all of these techniques and all of this stuff that it was very flashy and very showy like, But I struggle with him sometimes, just making sure tempo was there. because that's my job. I have to make sure, like Black, you got to come back in on the one. You got to come. I got to know where that tempo is, and we would have this back and forth about that a lot of times. And him and Rhonda sometimes would have a little, think because Rhonda's about timing too. Her timing is like crazy, and so we would have that from time to time. So I love Black had this very wonderful attitude about him, playing and everything. He's been very, hey, big bro, I'm gonna do this. So he's just like that little kid is always like, okay, man. But I think when it comes to the lock of the drummers that I played with, Sheila is amazing, and a lot of the drummers, Cora Coleman, she was great. But Michael Bland just had this thing, where he was very sharp about what it is that he needed to do. Michael the other thing that I thought was amazing about Michael, and I'm going to try to keep my answers succinct, but I want people to get as much information as they can. One of the things about Michael, if you ever go in any of our shows where we like Top of the Pops or some of the music videos where we weren't playing live, Prince would be live, but some of the shows like Top of the Pop, it's like, the band is like, we got a track and stuff, but Prince's stuff would always be hot. His vocals, his guitars, and whoever else that needed it, that would be hot. But what Michael did is you couldn't tell looking at him because he could play exactly every note that he played in the original recording. If you look at him play drums, you cannot tell he's not playing because he plays every lick just like the record. That's incredible to me.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Like, especially you talking about Shush. I mean, he could write that music out. That's music, man. It's like you can write it out and play it back so somebody can read those notes. Mike can play that solo just like he wants, just like the record if he wants to. And that was like, I'm out of my pay grade right now, bro. I'm like way out of it. I don't even know how cats think like that. Michael Bland is a freaking genius, So I have a great love for Michael. And of course, him being the guy that was there when I came in.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I ask that sort of a pivot on what you've just said? That drum break that Michael did, and it sort of defines what it is to be a Prince drummer, because every drummer who came after, John, Cora, Hannah, they all had to take that solo and recreate it as best they could. Is there something that you've played where you look at, the people who were in the band in the stints that you weren't, where you think, oh, okay, they managed to decode something that I've done?
My thing was, man, I always like to find something cool, like that I could play that was like a thing that make Prince turn his head and go like, yeah, that right there. And I did it like in I Hate You and just some things like that with some of the Hammond stuff and some of the organ stuff. The whole thing with just holding a high note, play all your stuff while you hold a high note, things like that were just simple things that made the song lift and go up and down and add energy to it, things like that, man, that just gave a lot of uplift to the music, And so I don't consider myself a keyboard player that's like I've done these incredible forces. I used to enjoy, for me, what made my job a lot of fun is because, there was a stint of where for one time I was the only keyboard player in Prince's band, which that was crazy because I was the first cat, I think, that ever was in a band with Prince that I was the only keyboard player. And Prince's stuff is keyboard heavy. So I had a task in the late 90s to like reproduce all of Tommy's parts, my parts. And I had to deploy a lot of things and like be able to do that, like sample like lines and things and still play all of my parts, man. It was hell, man. I don't even know. I think about it now and I go, how in the hell did I even do it? Because there was so much stuff. There was some complexities to it. I had to learn all of these things. But there's some parts that I did on some, music with the Hammond and with some of the stuff that I enjoyed because it changed the sound of the band, because adding that churchy component in the Hammond to that level, not that he hadn't put organ on some other tracks. I mean, Adore is one of his dopest tracks, and it's got that organ thing going on it, you know, and a lot of tracks. But it just wasn't like the center part of the sound. It just was a thing that happened on the record here and the record there. But by the time I came around, the sound, you know, with Tommy on the whirly and the Rhodes and me on the organ was just really a thing. And it just was in that sound of music for that duration of time that we were together, you know. So that, I appreciate that, man, and I like the fact of that. But what was great for me is that Prince always had he had some cool keyboard players, and he had some real dope ones, you know, like Cassandra O'Neill and Barbarella and Renato Neto. Neto used to just, I told Neto, I said, bro, I'd just be glad to come to work just to hear what you're gonna do today, because he could just do whatever he felt like. It's just like it just bananas, you know. I love my teammates, man. And it just like Prince should have described to me how we were as a band was like what the winning Chicago Bulls, when they were setting up their dynasty, Prince was like, we always tell me, as Morris, we got to look at ourselves like the Chicago Bulls. You know, Michael Jordan was one of his favorite players, as like many people, until Steph Curry, you know, got around and Steph became one of his favorites. But he always liked the team aspect of the Chicago Bulls. He said, Morris, I'll shoot the three. You're Dennis Rodman. You get the rebound. Yeah. You kick it out. He said everybody's got a role to play. Everybody's got a part to put in. One of our favorite songs that we used to do was "In Time," Sly and the Family Stone, and that song is one of the funkiest songs in the world, because if you separate everybody's parts out, it sounds like a bunch of chicken scratch. And with the exception of maybe like the bass, it's like, you know, you got one guitar going chink, doodle chink, and it's like, and then the horn, and it's just like these little pieces of, he got a part, he has a part, she has a part, and it's in the bass is what, that's what's going through the track. That's like the cohesive part of it, and what the bass and drums is doing, which is always your foundational piece. But that song is funky because of the orchestration and everybody's part in it. And so that's what I was there. Prince always used to call me the glue. He said, Morris, you know what to do. Just fill up the spots. You know, you're the glue. Put this in here and do this over here, and just listen to what's happening and find a place to fit in. And it's just like, he knew how to delegate parts to people. He knew your strengths. He knew your weaknesses. I wasn't a great soloist. You know, that's not my thing. But I could play these complex samples and different things and play these parts. He used to do, I remember Lenny used to hang out with us a lot, Lenny Kravitz. And he'd come over and hang out, and Prince would just tell me, Morris, just play your parts on this song, just your parts. And with, you know, I'd play it and Lenny be like, God dang, all of that is just by yourself? That's all of you? And he said, how do you do that, Morris? And then Prince said, ancient Chinese secret. You know, he'd be like that. You know, he'd say that because he said that's what each cat is bringing to. Now, when I add the other key, when I add Barbarella, it's going to even get more stupid, because now Tommy's got his stuff to bring to it. And so it was just, and knew where you landed in that collection. So that was the big.
I wanted to say, Morris, you talked about something earlier. I don't know if a lot of the non-musician viewers would really, maybe don't quite understand. I've played in some bands with some keyboards, and you know, I have a little idea of some of the advancement. We were talking about Moogs in the 70s, but then the 80s, you know, MIDI comes in and the patching and looping. Like, I don't know if people really understand how much work that is to be constantly keeping up with the technology and new patches and new sounds. That sounds like you had a hell of a workload on you.
But I'm going to tell you where the genesis of it is. When I was going to school in Chicago, I used to go to DeVry in Chicago. And, you know, computer school is kind of tough, man. And I mean, I was in it and doing it. You know, I got recruited by this guy that was saying, computers is the future. All right. You're going to learn to do computers. That's the future. I said, computers, huh? They're going to take over. I said, all right, I'm game. I try to compute what it do, man. God bless this guy. His name is EJ. He was a manager at the Guitar Center in Chicago on South Side. And EJ would let me come in because I didn't have any really gear at the time in Chicago, and I didn't have uh, things that, so I had to go to the Guitar Center to kind of get my fix. I was one of them irritating dudes that would be down there playing Prince tracks or whoever, and I got the chance to try out all of the new stuff that came in because I couldn't afford any of it. But the Moog, Memory Moog, all of that stuff, the Oberheims, and man, I would be playing this stuff. And he just said, "Man, you should come and work here. You're selling more stuff than the guys that work here.
Wow.
You're just playing, and people are buying this stuff. Just like, yeah, that's dope. Give me that keyboard." And he said, "You should." I said, "I can't work here, man. I don't have time. I got school. But I appreciate you letting me come in here and just study like what all of this stuff is. They let me have a run of the place, and they were super cool and patient with me. I wouldn't be obnoxious, but they just let me have it. And that's what really got my side of the technology side really cool, because I got to quickly see all of the new equipment, figure out how it works, talk to the experts that were there at the Guitar Center that helped me out with at that young age, man, and kind of dealing with it, man. And they were just so cool, man. And that's what really got me into it. So I always wanted to be on the cutting edge of like what was happening, not the bleeding edge, but the cutting edge. And so it was funny because when I came in after, Prince saw me doing the whole looping thing, when I got in, I inherited a rig that Rosie was playing. And it had like an Emax and some other stuff in it, some Proteus, like some stuff. And now all of that stuff to me was like, bro, I had a Roland at that time. I had did like a publishing deal with these guys, and I had like a Roland 770, and like this thing is like $8,000. This sampler, and I managed to get a deal on it. This thing's crazy. So I told Prince, I said, "Prince, no disrespect, but your gear sucks. I like my stuff is better than yours, and you're Prince." And he said, "Well, fix it." So what I did was I had the Skip Johnson, who was our production manager at the time. Skip, who was married to Grace Slick, by the way. I always used to say, "Hey, Skip, that's married to Grace Slick." That was our guy. And so I told Skip, I said, "Skip, Prince said for me to fix this rig because your sampler samples at 39.7 kilohertz." And I said, "That sucks. I have to convert all of the samples into mine," which I call Roland, or my text called Roland, and said we need a converter program that will convert all of these samples that Rosie had into 44.1 that I'm going to be using on this sampler. And it was a thing, man. They created a patch for us to use on to create to cross all our samples out of that Emax into our Rolands. And so once I fixed all of the gear, man, that's when Prince was like, "Oh, so you can do," because I said, "Yeah, man, my stuff is killer. Yours suck." And then he was like, "Okay, we'll fix it." And then once he saw the capacity and the capability of it, he says, "Oh, you can do that? Okay. So then you can do this and that and this and this and that." And then I really found out I'd screwed up because I ran my mouth too much. And now he was like, "Okay, great, wizard. Now you can do this and that and the other." And I had to like remember and then max out what I knew about that stuff. He always was in the future. I remember Bobby Z coming and seeing me doing my thing and what we were doing. And Bobby said to me, "This is what he wanted to be doing back when we were the band. This is what you're doing right now is what he wanted us to do back then." That's funny. I got my guy, Jerome Benton, give me a holler right there.
Oh, hey. Hello,
Jerome. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that was the thing. So I got into it a long time ago, and it's just been a part of my whole thing is the technology with the looping and the sampling and all of that stuff.
I play a game with myself at times where I take one of the tracks from one of the later albums and see if I can substitute it on something, maybe from the 80s and see, because in my opinion, I don't think he suffered from any sort of degradation. His popularity went up and down, but his talent was the same throughout the years. I know that obviously you were something of a fan before you ever came into the Purple Orbit. What type of fan were you?
I was the type that I appreciated the musicianship of Prince. I remember my brother had some of his records, and I would play it. And I remember like Head. I just listened to the solo and like Matt Fink did on Head. I was just like, God, dog, this is crazy. Like just that was one of the cold-blooded solos I've ever, like I'm like, this dude has a groove on this song that was just like, as Mark Brown would say, congruous. It was a crazy groove, and then when that solo happened, and how Matt used the filter to, and then he used portamento only in certain places. It's like he crafted a solo that was like dynamic because of it. Just wasn't like he just played off a bunch of notes and did a bunch of stuff. He actually had like stuff where he gave you a master class in synthesis, how to take filters real time and use it like use a cutoff or resonance and just or just a pitch thing, or just go in and do that. So for me, it was like, how did he do that? What did he use to make this? And then when he went up to the top of the keyboard, he knew when to turn the portamento on, so that when it went, and then the LFO, he had to turn the LFO to where that would, at the higher uses of it, would completely go wacky. Because I noticed that was something that Prince used to like to do in order to make his sounds different from anybody else's on that keyboard. He turned the pitch wheel on and leave it up high so that everything is like dreamy and that's because he just would turn up the pitch wheel and leave it up like Dorothy Parker. He took the Fender sound and then pushed up the modulation wheel and then just played the chords on it. And now he's got a totally different sound. You're going like listen to how warbly that keyboard is, that DX7. And I knew all of the keyboards. The minute I hear a keyboard, I know what it is. It's like, that's a DX7. And he's got the port. He's like, but instead of just using it a little bit, he just turned it on full blast and just started playing it. I used to love the Prince used to have these incredible Fairlight synthesizers. It was like way out of my pay grade. I didn't even see Fairlights at the Guitar Center. So they're these high end keyboards, these incredible samplers. And it wasn't until I started playing stuff off of Sign of the Times where I had to go to the vault and get the tapes. And I got the tapes, and I'm like asking the engineer, I'm like, where's the rest of the track sheets? Like, where are the rest of this track sheet? It's only 16 tracks. Like, where's the rest? He said, that's it. I said, what? I said, you're telling me Sign of the Times, all this stuff is 16 tracks? And I'm like, what the? And so Prince had got this Fairlight, and he was like enamored with this thing. And so all of that stuff, a lot of that's the Fairlight. And what I found that he did, like on Sign of the Times itself, we used to have these big arguments with the guitar player. I used to have these arguments like, we're trying to decipher these chords, because the cover band I played with, they wanted everything to sound like the record. So they want to know exactly. I would have not in a million years figured out that what Prince did was he went on the Fairlight, and on the pre-chorus, he just hit the lowest sample and held it. And just over time, serendipity, just synchronicity, whatever you want to call it, the chord would change just because it's going just, but over time that it's changing over and I was like, oh my God. So we were all wrong. It's just like he didn't play it that way. The sample evolved that way. He put it down and held it until the whole pre-chorus went over it, and it just, everything fell in the right place. And I just was like, holy shit, this is crazy. I never would have figured it out in a million years, man. And it made the song what it was. That chord pad, you had to just try to redecipher it in your own way, because that you would never do it in a million years, because that sample was played like 2 or 3 times lower than what the actual original sample was. And he was just smart enough to do that and just make it sound unique like that. So that's the kind of stuff. And I always got off on that, because it's like, how did he think of that? I mean, like, how did he think of it? Just like, and there's just tons and tons of examples of records that he did where he did some kind of trick. He used to have a thing called a Publison. And this Publison was a piece of gear that's like, it's 20 grand, 15, 20 grand or something. like crazy amount of money for this effect. And it would do things like samplers at the time couldn't do, like same pitch but different speed, or same speed with a different pitch. And he would play like horn lines that the horn section did not play, that he would just hit different samples and hit them in certain places, and it would completely reharmonize or change all of the way that the parts were going. That now made the horn players sound like they were geniuses. It was just just crazy like that.
Did you when your time with MPG, did you stick with Roland, or did you experiment with like Korg or other brands of keyboards?
Oh yeah, I mean, I used a lot of Roland. I just at the time Roland just had just some meaty stuff, man. And Prince liked Roland at the time. He he actually kind of like got me to where I just wanted to like choke him sometimes, because he would just really just overuse. I like using a lot of different stuff because everything's got different textures to it. Like Korg sounds different from Yamaha. Yamaha sounds different from Korg. So when I first got in, we were using Yamaha controllers, the KX series stuff, that didn't really make any sounds. They were just controllers. And then I had a rack full of like gear. Like I did use like like some EMU stuff, and I used some of the. But then when I found the Roland stuff had multi-timbral type of situation where I could use 8 tracks, and I had I was using some Apple, some Mac computers, using opcodes, Studio 5s, and was using their basically their mapper, so that I could take all of my keyboards and my setup, which I had about 6, and I could map them out to do some of the craziest stuff. I had Paul McCartney's people like say, "Dude, how are you doing this? Will you send us your your algorithm, how you like do this thing?" It was crazy, man. And so what I was able to do was put all of these. I had 3 samplers because we were playing Claire Fisher string arrangements. Like my whole sampler would be just Claire's parts on the song, and then I had another sampler that would preload to the next song, so that they would instantly, because it took 30 seconds to load a fully blown 32 gig 760. It took about 30 seconds for that to load up. Prince goes from song to song like this. There is no time to load. So I had to have 3 samplers so that one could be loading while one's playing, and they would do that one and then the next one. So they would skip from sampler to sampler, so that they would automatically be, from when I hit the switch on my LRC, my Lexicon LRC, that thing would switch all of the keyboard patches, all of the samplers would preload. That's why I told Prince, I said, "Prince, I gotta have a set list, bro, because I have to program this, because he changes the set every show. And so I need to know what load number is on the samples so that I can make sure that that loads up, because you go directly, I can't change like, okay, what patch am I using on this one, and this one? Bro, that's like a nightmare. It's like you having 6 stump boxes and you got to change them all 6 different things at once. It ain't gonna. You got to go click, 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 pow, pow, ping, ping, pow, pow, and in the dark, and then with the lights going out, and you don't have time for that, man. So I had to know what was. I just would beg him, like, please, 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 for the love of Christ, Prince, I need to have a set list so I can kind of arrange this to where I know what's happening. And sometimes you just go with the flow, and I just had to figure it out. Then that's when you spend extra time on your own with your rig, memorizing where I had a jukebox, basically 127 positions where I could put songs, and I can tell you every slot was filled.
Wow.
Sometimes I'd have to ask him, what can I get rid of to put some new stuff in? I said, Prince, I'm maxed out. I need to know what I need to get rid of so I can add these new songs. We got in a really big fight one time because he kept asking for stuff, and I said, I don't have any more room. And he's like, well, we got into this real big. I won't go into it because it was kind of ugly. Because I had to, I'm 6'5", and sometimes, he can wear you out. But he had got my goat this day, and I was like, I'm not trying to feel it today, brother, and we're gonna have a problem. There's gonna be some furniture moving around. So I just told him, I just said, Prince. He said, when is it gonna be ready, Morris? And I said, well, you can go and come back. And when you come back, it still ain't gonna be ready. And then it was like, oh, you know, it's gonna be a day to day, you know. But I had that. So, but he did acquiesce and came back under my rig and looked at. I put everything on the screen. He said, "Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. You can put that back." And we had to go through and take out about 10 things so that I can put some new stuff in, because it's like I don't. He would max it out. We were a jukebox band because he wanted us to know that any one of these songs he could pull up, man. And I had to like kind of memorize. So same with Tommy. We had to memorize what number. Kiss is number 18 today. So I got to look this over so that I have an idea. If he jumps in the Kiss, I know to just go push 18, and that would automatically trigger everything to go to Kiss patches. So we can do that. So that's how crazy that was.
Did you and Tommy ever just kind of look over each other's rigs and teach each other anything or make any observations? Or
Well, Tommy was extraordinarily helpful to me. You know, I brought a lot of technology with me that I did, but Tommy, you know, knew the ropes and knew a lot of things. And I have to say this, man, because it's funny style, man. And a lot of bands, you have this internal competition thing that happens. You know, it's kind of funny because I'm spoiled, man. I never really experienced that so much, uh, but I've noticed a lot of people that come in sometimes they have, and because we always kind of dealt with stuff kind of more like a family kind of a vibe. I never had any issues with Barbarella. He always was like helpful, always was like trying to make sure that you know, that he educated me on how things worked, how things went. I could ask him some stuff, and he never was annoyed or anything like that, man. He always was very helpful. And to me, that was paramount, man, because you know, man, I'm in a situation where I'm with these cats, man. I'm an old guy on the totem pole, and you know, you can get kicked around and a lot of that. I never experienced that, man. Nothing. You know, Sonny gave me a lot of good advice. Michael Bland gave me advice, and Tommy was a good partner, man. There were never any arguments about who does what. You know, I just would always we kind of figured out early on, you know, if it's piano related, maybe sometimes I would do it, but mostly Tommy would do it. I know I'm gonna cover organ and I'm gonna cover some pads, some synth stuff, some different things like that, some chops, and sometimes we both would cover it. But it just was a great communication thing, man, and which is why that band was so great. We rehearsed all the time, we practiced all the time together, even when Prince wasn't there. And so that band was super tight because we went to work like working at McDonald's. Every day we punched the clock and rehearsed whether Prince was there or not, and just went in and played. And then we got to know each other musically, and just we celebrated each other's strengths. I knew what he was going to do. He knew what I was going to do, and so it just was. That's why that band was like that.
Can I take you back just to the period before you come into the full blown band? So apologies if I sort of make this succinct, but obviously Mark Brown had seen a band in Memphis, and you joined that band
Mm-hmm.
before they go up to Minneapolis. So there's this period where you're the Glam Slam uh, house band, and I see saw on your bio that you've done some work with like film scoring and some work for Martin Lawrence's special. And I had a real hard time
Mm-hmm.
sort of piecing together the timeline of, is that work that you were doing before he sort of graduates you up into the full band? How did that come about?
Oh, I mean, so this is the crazy part. So yeah, to speak on the '80s part with the band Fingerprint. That's the Memphis band that Prince had seen. Um, uh, like Prince would do, like when I was in the band, we would go after our shows. We would find a club, either like a club that's a club or a club that has a band, or we were going to play, you know. And so whenever it was a band, if you know, our people would find out where there's people playing, and we go check out people. And so just like that, um, they came and checked out the band Fingerprint. And with that band, man, we played a lot of time. We played a lot of Prince. We played a lot. It was a cover band, so we of course we played. But what was great about that band is everything that they did. Greg and Angelo did to the lead singer and the guitar player. made sure that everything was like just like the record. I mean, in terms of sounds, in terms of arrangements, and like because they always wanted to be like in that area of competing against like Prince and Michael and people like that. They weren't worried about being the best local band, beating up on the Squares or any of that. And because you go to Squares and people are like, who Squares? And we go, exactly. And so we wanted to whoop Prince and wanted to whoop Michael Jackson. We wanted to whoop Cam and the groups like that were out at the time. That's who the whoop. And so when they came and saw that band, and we're like, oh my God, Brown and came down and the management, Craig Rice, all these people came down afterwards. We're like, you guys, we see a lot of people playing our music, but you guys sound like us, and that was the beginning of that connection, just that they were there and heard the band sound like, wow, this is like we're sitting watching ourselves play, and that's what really made the link to Brown Mark and the Minneapolis thing. That was that part. The Martin Lawrence thing, see, when I first started with Prince, I was working with Craig Rice, who was one of Prince's managers. He was a road manager for Purple Rain, and he was one of the directors for a lot of the films that Prince was making. I mean, like he was director on of Graffiti Bridge, and he directed a lot of videos and music videos and stuff. And so he had connections in Hollywood in different places where he was doing stuff. And I got the Martin gig through Craig, because Craig was, he was dealing with HBO, Miramax, all these people. And it was crazy because I was pulling my normal duty with Prince this early on. And I got that gig. And so after we do our late stuff, do all this crazy stuff, I would go and do like Prince would do. We would rehearse all day, and then Prince go in the studio and record all night. I don't know how he does it. He would just be up 2 days at a time, 3 days at a time, all the time. He could do it all the time. I couldn't do it. I mean, I did maybe 3 days in a row, maybe 2 or 3 times in my whole career. And it's like after 3 days, bro, you're like toast. It's like you're just like it's crazy, But Prince could do that on just like he could do it. So I had to go and like away from work, do the Martin. I remember when Prince found out about that I did the soundtrack for this. It's a movie called "You So Crazy," and it was just a comedy movie, and all I had to do was like the intro and the end, and he comes out and does his thing, and it's me playing the "You So Crazy" and all of this stuff. And I just basically had to do that much. It wasn't like I had to do a whole film score at that time. It just source music at the beginning, the intro and the end. So, and then the trailer for the movie that was in theaters and that stuff, and so I just squirreled away the time. And I remember Martin Lawrence was at the height of, he was just really big at the time. And I remember when Prince found out about it, he said, you worked on this Martin movie? And he said, when did you have time to do that? And I said, I just did like you, man. I leave rehearsal and get my homework done, and then I work on this extra thing. And he said, do you know how to get a hold of him? And he says, because I've been trying to reach him and I haven't been able to get. I say, I got his people, and it was kind of cool because I was doing something Prince couldn't do at the time because he was like, well, I've been trying to reach out to him or whatever, So it was kind of cool, man, and the fact that my work didn't suffer because you would have noticed, like no wonder you were sucking that week because you was working on the Martin movie, and I couldn't have that, man. Yeah. I could not have that. I had to make sure that my work was done and everything was cool at work, and then I'd squirrel away the time to go do the Martin Lawrence thing or to go do some other stuff that I was working on at the time. That I always had to make sure home was knocked out, man, because if it suffered and he found out, then it's going to be trouble in the city.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that love of illustration for comics that you had, did you influence him? Because it was around the time that you were coming into camp that we started getting the 3 Chains of Gold and.
Oh yeah, that's Prince, man. I don't have nothing. I don't think there's any. One thing I influenced Prince with, Prince loved comedy, man. I think one of the biggest parts of my longevity in that organization was the fact that I was funny and that I was this big joker, this kind of clown. that I would just kind of do this court gesture thing. And I was just funny, man. I always wanted to be a comedian. I just was too afraid. I had to like stand up somewhere by myself and maybe bomb telling some sorry jokes. But I was okay with doing it around us. I had enough of it to be funny, not enough to be like dangerous. But it was just the thing that he loved comedy, and I keep him laughing. I used to like to hear him laugh. Prince had the funniest, like when you really get him, he laughs out loud, really funny. You know, like ha ha ha, ha like from the Simpsons. You know, it was really funny, and so my thing was to get him every time I got a chance, like get him on something and make him laugh like that. And that's one of the things that I miss the most about him even now is that I did that hearing him laugh like that. And so
So those
that was,
interludes,
you know,
sorry to
yeah.
interrupt, interludes on
No,
things
no,
like
no, yeah.
Emancipation and Montalvo, and is that stuff that you were doing in the studio and then you just happened to hit record, or is it scripted by you
Yeah,
guys?
no, no, yeah, man. That stuff was hilarious, man. As a matter of fact, on the Madhouse record, Madhouse 24, Prince had an actual recording of me, like just me talking on. I think on Nona Gay's on uh, uh, Marvin Gaye's tune. I could imitate Mark Brown. I could imitate like Michael Jackson, and I could imitate Prince and Craig Rice. Really, Prince used to ask me to imitate Mark Brown and Craig Rice. He's like, Morris, do Craig. Prince, I did not make me start this shit. And he would just start almost crying, man, because he said, "Oh my God, you got Craig down so good, man, and like you got Mark Brown so good." He asked me to do Mark on this one track. Got to give it up. That's it. Got to give it up. And he just hit record and said, Morris, do your thing. And I just made it up as I went. And I could hear him and Nona in the studio just dying laughing. It's on the track. Like they're just in there just dying. And he would let me just, even in other videos that we do, Prince has footage in the vault of me just doing the whole video by myself and just doing my just crazy Montalvo stuff and just all of this stuff. Because he just thought, man, Morris is crazy. He just like doing this stuff and all of my church humor, because I went to church. I used to wear this church lady hat on stage and then just be the old church lady, like, hey, man, everybody, welcome. And he just would be like dying, man. Like, it was like he just loved it. And sometimes I do it, like we had a run in Vegas, at the Rio 3121. And that was just part of the show, like I put on my church hat and do my organ thing. It's hilarious, man. And it's like, that was some of the fun that we had, and that was a lot of the stuff that was the lead in it that I think that just like kept me around a lot, because sometimes Prince had a lot of pressure, man, and a lot of things that he had to deal with, man, and I was the cat that just kind of like just brought the levity sometime, man, and just where he's just like, man, we can laugh a little bit and just like let the valve open up a little bit, man. Prince was tough, man. I mean, and any little thing that I could do that was like fun and it just like had us cracking up and stuff, man. Even with the band, especially when we got the girls and stuff in the band, like Shelby and Cassandra, like all the, just like sometimes, man, stuff got, man. But anyway, if you can hear me, okay, it was just that Prince was saying that he just needed a different persona for that music. He couldn't pull it off the way he was looking and the way he was kind of his vibe was, and that's why he needed Morris to kind of like create this different persona for that music. And so I think a lot of the comic relief that he got with Morris, he got with me.
Yeah. And in terms of that comic relief, I've had a question for years about Matthew McConaughey coming to all the house parties in like 2008.
All right.
And he's at Arkansas. He's Texas,
Oh
isn't he?
my
But
God.
he's not far from Arkansas border, is he?
Yep.
We're back,
solid.
dang it.
You were just about to spill the tea on Matthew McConaughey.
Okay, so this is hilarious, man. This was one of the legendary 3121 parties at Prince's house. And Matthew decided he wanted to be bongo player for the night. He's a percussionist, right? And he is into it, man. I mean, Matthew is into it. He's committed. And basically, man, he bloodies his hands like playing. He's cut himself. He's bleeding. So after the thing's over, we're in the kitchen, me and Matthew and Prince. Excuse me. This is so funny because Matthew's like, he's had the time of his life. He's like, man, that was cool, man. And he's telling Prince like, this was great. And he says, put it there. And he says, you're bleeding. He says, your hand's bleeding. He says, yeah. He says, we can be blood brothers. And Prince like, yeah, no. We will not be being blood brothers. Yeah, no. Ain't gonna happen.
That's funny.
So Prince was like, yeah, no, we're gonna go ahead and not do that and shake hands bloody. So yeah, no.
So
Me and
can you
Matthew got to
name drop?
talking, man.
Oh, sorry, Terry.
No, I was just gonna say we got to talking about, Austin, in the time, and I said, yeah, I said, Matthew, I used to live in Austin, man. I used to come down to this barbecue place. And he said, yeah, and where you worked, and he says, it was around the same time. And he says, yeah, he says, I said, man, that was crazy, man, that I went in there and got barbecue and you were working. He said, yeah, and the sisters were just like, they just would wear me out because, like, he's a good looking kid, Matthew McConaughey is a good looking kid. He said, them big sisters down there used to sweat him like nobody. I'm just dying laughing, man. I can totally see him. He's got this smock on and he's got his muscles out. And these girls is like, ooh, child, so it was, man, we were just dying laughing about it because it just was so funny. Like, that's what he was doing while I was playing on 6th Street. He's down there slinging barbecue down at this place right there in Austin. And just some good memories, man. Just going back, just like where we both were and now where we both are. So that was kind of fun,
Brian's
man. Matthew's
a
a
bit of a
super
foodie.
guy.
You know what I'm going to
Brian's
ask?
a bit of a foodie.
I have to ask
it
Morris this
Franklin?
now. So, I'm going to ask him. So, Morris, we've heard a lot about the ribs at Rudolph's. Were they really as good as from what we've been hearing?
Let me tell you something, man. Rudolph's, Minnesota in general, man. When I first got to Minnesota, it was the weirdest place I think I ever had been at the time because I'd never been to a place where restaurants was like the hang, like nightclubs. Like it was like we're gonna go to the Rudolph's, and I'm like, Rudolph's, the barbecue place, but it was like the club after the club, and everybody, Jimmy and Terry had their own booth that nobody could sit in but them, had like a rope around it. It's Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis's spot. That's their hang. It was the place to be. Really good food, packed out after the clubs closed up, man. It's like 2 o'clock on was Rudolph's. And everybody went to these restaurants like they were like nightclubs, man. And I'm like, what? I've never been to a place where the smokehouse is the hang. And like people take a limo over to the smokehouse or whatever, And so, excuse me, that was crazy. But the food was great at Rudolph's, man. It was really good. I recall I used to love to go there, even when it wasn't like club night. We go there and eat, and like I said, jam and loose. If you wanted to see some stars, the stars of Minnesota, that's where you would go because that was the hang, man. And just like we had a place called Williams, in different places, like there were these places, and it was just like that was the places to be, man. That was the hang, and but yeah,
So once
Rudolph was
Rudolph
the business.
closed,
What happened was,
where'd you go now for barbecue?
there's a place, oh my gosh, I took Philip Bailey there, a place called Market Barbecue, which is like near downtown and on Nicollet Avenue. Market Barbecue. That was the spot. I took Philip Bailey there. It was so good. Philip was so messed up that he was like, he called me. I was on tour with Prince, the Welcome to Canada tour, I think it was. Or no, it may have been before that, like an earlier tour that we were in Canada. And yeah, it was before that. he called me, man. I'm on the tour bus, like I'm going, man. Philip, hey Morris, what's that barbecue place you took me to in Minneapolis? I got Shaka Khan. I want to take her to that place. I said, Mark, he said, that's it. All right, bye. Click. And you know, he's gone. He's like, yeah, that's the place. That's the place. And you know, and he loved it so much he took Chaka Khan to it. And
Wow.
you know, so Market Barbecue was the other place, and I think it's still there.
And
And it's out of sight, man.
what's the Austin one that you and McConaughey, was that Franklin's?
I was, huh?
Is it Franklin's barbecue in Austin? Is
Yeah,
it like the
yeah,
other
I
one?
think it's Franklin's. Yeah,
Is that where he worked?
yeah, I think that's the one it was, Franklin. If I remember correctly,
Wow.
I think it was that. I believe that's the one it was.
That's crazy because they
But he
featured
used to
that
be in there
chef.
slinging it, man, doing his thing.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah, that's bananas, man. But that was a funny deal.
I'll throw in a
So
page. I'll throw in a Patreon question here. I'll just if I can get this one in.
cool.
This is from our good friend on Patreon, Wanda Manning. She also wanted me to tell you personally that she loves you. But when Prince shaved your head on stage, how did you really feel about it? And did you get a bonus for doing that?
Well, it all grew back. It came back because his hair. So, but check this out, man. It's so funny because I just looked at that on video maybe 2 days, maybe yesterday, 2 days ago. So here's the deal. I give you the story, the Cliff's Notes version. I told Prince, we at this point we're shooting a lot of videos, we're doing a lot of stuff. Prince was shooting videos all the time. So I wanted to change my look up a little bit. And I went to him, I said, hey Prince, I'm thinking about shaving my hair bald, man. And I said, so I wanted to ask you before I did it because I know we've been shooting videos. I know one Prince thing that he would do all the time is we'd shoot a video, and then months later he said, "Oh, you know what? Weeks later, we're going to go back and shoot some pickup scenes for that." So what I didn't want to do is shave all my hair off and then mess up the continuity of any of the videos that we had already shot. And I just said, Prince, I'm thinking about doing this, man. So I don't want to cut my hair off. And then you say we got to go shoot something for one of these videos we just did because I won't have any hair, you know, and I'm gonna put on a wig on. So he said, no, that's fine. He said, but then I was getting ready. But wait. He said, we had a guy named Paris Patton that was our videographer guy that did the Sacrifice of Victor thing we did in London. Paris was like in-house video guy at the time. He said, take Paris with you and have him shoot them shaving your head. He said, maybe I could use that footage, just you getting your hair shaved off. And I said, okay, cool. You know, and I told Paris, I said, hey man, Prince wants you to go with me when I go to the barbershop. He wants you to like get your camera and go shoot me, get my head shaved off, you know, or whatever. And he says, cool, because Paris is like, yeah, he's like thinking of stuff too. He's like, great. So I hadn't gone yet. I went to the Glam Slam. And now here's the backstory to that. I remember Mark when I first started working for Prince. Mark Brown told me, he said, Morris, whatever you do, don't ever let Prince cut your hair. And I said, Mark, why the fuck? Like, why the hell would Prince cut my hair? Like, whoa. I was like, why would he cut my hair? He said, man, he gave me a haircut, butchered my hair, man. He said, and I was like, I saw the video, and I was like, oh yeah, he did. It's jacked up, man. He like gave Mark a jacked up haircut. Like Sexuality or one of those songs. It's like Mark's hair is just like it's like this, bro. It's tore up. So I was just thinking, like, Mark, why would I let Prince cut my hair? That's like crazy. So I get to the club. Prince sitting there with Ahmad Rashad. And I don't know if Shaq was there that night, but I know Ahmad was. So him and Ahmad are sitting together. I go over and he calls me over. He says, hey, Morris. He says, I got an idea. He says, why don't you let me cut your hair instead of you going over to the barbershop stage when we're playing? I said, wait a minute. I said, man, Brown Mark told me don't ever let you cut my hair. And he said, well, he says, you're going to shave it off. How can it go wrong? What can I do wrong? Well, I guess you got a point. I said, yeah, if you're going to, it's going to be bald anyway. You can't mess it up. He says, He says, yeah. I said, well, do I get hazard pay? And he said, no. So, because I was like, so, so excuse me. I said, okay. I'm like, cool. You know, we'll do it. It was for this whole thing we were doing for NBA All-Star Week. And so he was like so excited. He says, oh, great, great. He turns to Ahmad and says, hey, this is my keyboard player. He's gonna let me shave his head on stage at the thing we're doing at the party for the NBA All-Star party. Ahmad was like, oh, okay. Like, that's gonna be weird. And it was crazy, man. It was like I knew it was gonna happen. Uh, I didn't know how exactly it was gonna happen because we didn't really talk about the technical parts of it. He just like, we're gonna be playing Days a While, then I'm gonna foof your hair up, like get the hairdresser. He told me like get the hairdresser to really foof it up real high, as like high as they can foof it up, put some stuff in it and get it all. And then you're gonna have on your cloak and all this stuff, and then I'm gonna come over and pull the cloak off, and then I'm just gonna like, I thought he was just gonna kind of like shave, like take some time and shave. What I didn't know is that it was gonna be like during the song, and then I got hair flying all over the keys, and I'm like, hair's in my mouth. It's everywhere, bro. I'm like, what the? And then he only takes a couple of swipes, and he puts the sound, the buzzer sound in the, that was a sample that we just added later. You couldn't hear the thing running, but man, it was like so bananas. But he was so happy, like we did it. And because I was sitting there, the thing I was kind of concerned about is like, I'm getting hair all in the organ. It's going in the synthesizers. It's everywhere, bro. Like, it's like hair. So I was kind of like, dude, like, don't get it all over my stuff. So there's one moment when I'm looking at myself and I'm like going, I look concerned right there because it's like I got this hair just going everywhere. But that was the only thing that was weird about it. And then on the next song, he sent the hairdresser up to finish me off while the song was playing. So she is shaving the rest of my hair so I don't look crazy. She's shaving the rest of my hair off while we're playing the next song. And then after we got off the stage, we kept playing and like taking these little short breaks. And man, he got off we were standing on my steps on my riser, or on Michael Bland's drum riser. I don't remember which one, but we were standing on the steps. And Prince was so excited. He was like, man, Gene, nobody's ever seen anything like that. Who's going to a concert so somebody get a haircut on the stage? And he kissed me in the top of my bald head twice. Like I was like, oh my God. Like he was standing behind me and he just kissed me in the top of the head, man. And it was like so weird, but he was really happy about the whole thing and just thought it was a rock and roll moment. He just said that. He said nobody, because he shows them, there's some shots where you see the people kind of looking, they're like going, what the hell is happening right now? Like these are the days of wow, and it was really a big thing for him. He was just like, man, that was so cool. Like Morris, he said that was awesome. Like he just was really excited about it.
Can I segue that into the Super Bowl press conference? How much did he say that he wasn't going to take any questions, and he'd use that sense of humor to get that group?
Yeah, we knew that was going to happen. I mean, as far as he had talked to us about, like, we're going to go and do this press conference. They're going to think that we're just going to take a bunch of questions and then we was going to jam or something. He said, but be ready. Just listen to me. I'm gonna go and then I'm gonna do this, and they're gonna ask me some questions, and then I'm gonna like I'll be ready to hit. So everybody knew to be on standby for whatever he says and just be at the ready to take off. But we did know that he wasn't gonna really take any questions and then just kind of go into this jam that we were just gonna do. We had to know that because otherwise he could have caught everybody off guard and not know everybody like and it would have been this train wreck. So we definitely knew to be on high alert because it was coming. Like he wasn't going to answer no questions, man. So he was going to go in.
Did it bother you that crowd was just so dead? Like all these reporters who they didn't even stand up and dance or
Well,
clap.
that's the thing though. These are professionals, man. They're there to do a press conference. They're not up for Prince's shenanigans. Prince is just doing stuff, and he didn't really set it up for them to really like to for them to like, okay, I'm gonna start jamming. Y'all go ahead and dance. These are like press people, you know. So it was funny to us, man, because it's just like they were just kind of shocked, like what is this, you know? So it wasn't like, you know, we had a crowd of our folks scattered amongst the folks that are super heavy. So it's just like it's kind of like stage diving into a crowd of celebrities. It don't work out so good when you ask my take.
No.
It don't work so good when you
Yeah.
stage dive in celebrities. They just move out of the way because they don't want to get there. Oh my goodness, you know, they just move out and you hit the ground. And so they you know,
Yeah.
the fans will buoy you and float you around, but not the celebrities. So reporters aren't very good, you know, the audience members.
Can I nail down a couple of things about that Super Bowl performance while we've got you? The
Sure.
first one is that I believe that there's a rehearsal that's recorded in case anything goes wrong on the night. They can play the rehearsal.
Yeah, they
Is
do
there a
that,
copy
but
somewhere
because
of
well, Prince has everything. I mean, what they do is on that Friday, because they knew the storm was coming. They knew it was coming, and so it's like we're going to have weather. We just don't know how bad it's going to be, and at what time it's going to hit for the Super Bowl. So they do that anyway. They have a contingency plan to make sure that we all were in full dress on Friday, like we're in full dress, like it's going to be. They film the whole thing, and they can superimpose us the way that the guy explained it to me. And I was MD on it, and I just told him, you know, like I had to have these discussions about all of this equipment with all of this electricity and all this water. And I said, bro, I got to make sure Prince doesn't get electrocuted. I got to make sure our keyboards, you know, the water, because we got a bunch of plugs and stuff. And they had, man, these cats, the NFL, man, I'm gonna tell you something. I ain't never seen anything like it. Like they had a contingency plan for the contingency plan. Everything was just like this dude said, "Don't worry about nothing. We this ain't our first rodeo. You're gonna be fine. Prince isn't gonna get electrocuted. Your stuff is gonna work. This is gonna work. Don't worry about it." And they handled it, man. It was incredible. Like they had made. I ain't even seen some of the stuff that they used before. Like the power got in some kind of thing so the water wouldn't get in it. And now the keyboards got jacked up because they got once we turned them off, they were done. There's all that rain had got in them, you know. But we were using my company, Open Labs, and Yamaha, and all these folks. I had these Open Lab keyboards, and they sent them especially for us to use at the Super Bowl. So none of our equipment from Las Vegas, because we were doing the run at the Rio, and we don't want to screw all our gear up, you know, because we send out our own equipment. So they made sure we had all new stuff just for that. And I think after that show was over, when they unplugged it, everything died. But we signed it and did an auction for like Make a Wish, and so they were able to like auction these keyboards off and then give the proceeds to Make a Wish. So it was great, man. It worked long enough because that's what happens when you get stuff wet. I mean, it'll work until you turn it off, and then it's like toast. And then
yeah,
so it was cool, man. They figured everything out. You know, Prince wasn't super happy about. I remember we went back to the truck and listened to the mix of the instruments and stuff like that. And he wasn't, Prince is always hard on any kind of award show, anything like that, man. He's hypercritical about the guitar, about the sound, about his microphone. Like all of these things are just like he nitpicks over everything like that, and he just wants to hear the mix. He's in the booth, like they're in the truck, and these guys are nervous, and they just want to. He wants to hear the mix of this and turn that up and this, that, and other. He's real crabby. Like it's like, bro, you just made history. I mean, there ain't never been no rain at a Super Bowl, and you did Purple Rain in the rain, bro. It don't get no better than that, bro. Like, what you want out of life, A lot of us almost fell down. I almost slipped down. The twins almost slipped down. Shelby, but man, it was one of the greatest moments I can remember. The only thing I thought that may have been better as far as the Prince thing was the Hall of Fame thing that he did with My Guitar Gently Weeps. I told him, I said, Prince, that was one of the dopest things I ever seen you do in my life, man. That was just
yeah,
and he told me about that, but I wasn't there for that. But I said that was one of the greatest things I've seen you do, man. It's incredible.
yeah. Do you think he was trying to prove a point in that middle of the 2000s, where he'd sort of dropped the dancing and the splits. Do you think he tried to make a point about his guitar playing?
You know, whenever Prince does something with the, you know, man, it was always a point of contention for Prince with like, you know, and it was for me too, because I'd read these magazines that all of the greatest guitar players ever magazines, you know, Rolling Stones top 100, or Prince would be like down 25 or 50 or something like that. I always thought this is bollocks. This is crazy. Like I've had Steve Vai give me a guitar for Prince and do this. Like, hey man, would you give this to Steve Vai? That's the devil in Crossroads. Okay, just so we clear. One of the greatest guitar players in the galaxy. All right. And he gave me a guitar, like, present me with an Oscar, and like, I want you to have this 7 string for Prince, and he's my hero, and blah blah blah. And I'm like going, God damn, man, this Steve Vai. You know what I'm saying? And people like Eric Clapton, all of these folks like this that always gets like number one, number two, Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix was dope. Make no mistake, he's a pioneer. He did what he did, but Jimmy, God rest his soul, had no kind of range like what Prince. Prince could go from any genre, any funk, jazz, rock, punk, whatever, and he could cover it, man. Plus he could sing, plus he could dance, plus he could play keyboards, plus he could play bass. It's like Prince got discredited for all of the stuff he could do. And I think people just looked over because he could do so much that it's just like, yeah. Prince play everything. He does it. He can play a little saxophone. He can do everything. And I think a lot of times, man, it was just irritating because I'm like, man, I could sick Prince of anybody. And so when you get up there with Tom Petty and all these cats, and it's like he gonna let them know. He told me, he said, you know what? Because I said, Prince, bro, that was banana sandwiches right there. When I just, and he said, you know what I did? He said, I for rehearsal, I just went half ass, turned it over. When the show hit, I let him have it, you know. And I said, yeah, that's what you do. You know, that was the thing. He wanted to let him know, like in the rehearsal, he just like, I'm just going do, just get the sound check on. And he said, when the show comes, I'm pulling out all the tricks. I'm doing like the fall into the crowd, let my bodyguard catch me. And you can see, and he told me, he said, go back and watch it and look at Tom Petty's face. And I went, because Tom had that, why, you little bastard. You know, it was just like,
You know,
it was funny, man.
Yeah.
Morris, you're saying too about that. In my journey in this channel, you know, I don't think people realize how far Prince has influenced people. I recently did an interview with a fellow by the name of Rick Hunold. He was a longtime guitar player in the thrash metal band Exodus. Him and Gary Holt, the other guitar player, who's also played for Slayer. Prince was their hero. Like Gary Holt has purple guitars he plays on stage. Like people don't.
Yeah.
You know, so it's very interesting to see his reach
I mean,
how far he's influenced.
Yeah, I think those who know, you know what I'm saying? I think guitar players, because like I said, man, Steve Vai really made a point of just letting me know. You know, I've heard interviews with Eric Clapton and some of the other guitar players that talked about, and I even see there's one guy on the internet that kind of dissects people's playing, and he said, I don't know how I missed all of these things on Prince, like you know, it wasn't a part of my influence when I was coming up. My dad used to play this and that, the other, and this dude is amazing because I'm like, man, he is hitting that just like Prince was hitting. Like he just hear it and just go, this is what he was doing. He put a little fly here, and he's just like going through it, man. I'm like, oh my God, and he just said, I just slept on it because that wasn't my sphere of influence when I was listening to the stuff I was listening to. But this dude is crazy, you know. And he kind of analyzes the video we do at the forum, play that funky music, and he was just like, this is, I mean, he's got the Telecaster, and he's kind of this is like him kind of doing a throwback to the Tele sound and the country and western kind of flavor he would kind of go to.
Yeah.
It just was like he had that kind of range.
Yeah.
You know, Prince used to listen to Buck Owens and like what's my man with that was on Hee Haw?
Roy Clark.
Not Buck Owens. Roy Clark, man. Roy Clark was a beast, you know, doing what he was doing, man. I mean, them cats like that, man. And so, you know, he understood all of those kind of techniques, and all of those sounds, man. And he could
Yeah.
do stuff, because one thing Prince used to say a lot was, he said, Morris, he said, we can do them, but they can't do us. You know, just do his little funny, tricky voice. He said, yeah, we can do them, but they can't do us. And that was a big deal for him. It's like that we can come and get you. I remember when we did the first MTV Music Awards in 1994 at Brandenburg Gate, and Aerosmith was of course that was like Armageddon. Aerosmith had this record, was huge, and the word we went Prince turned it down. He said, we're not gonna do it. He called me and said, hey, get everything together. We are going to do the MTV Awards. He said, I heard Steve Tyler just said that, why are we headlining when they got a bigger record than us? And and Prince was like, so we gonna go ahead and do it now, and we just gonna whoop that ass, and it's like this, And I said, oh, cool, So we got over, and it was crazy, man, because he was just like, just on this thing, and like always, like all of these rockers, man. He said, he said, we're gonna play our rock tune, we're gonna do this, and we going hard. And that was his thing. I had Steve Tyler and Joe Perry come in the dressing room after, and it was brutal, man, because Steve was completely contrite, and he had contrition for it. Like he said, I don't know how this terrible rumor got out, Prince. I had the sun and moon rises and sets with you, bro. And Joe Perry's like, yeah. They're just in there, man. Prince didn't say nothing, dude. He's got his shades on. He's got a lollipop. He's eating this thing. And all of the band, we're all sitting in the room. We're all sitting in the room, and nobody's saying nothing. Now I'm new, man. I'm a bleeding heart. Like, Steve was cool to me. He was cool to us, man. We out hanging out, man. And I got him on video hugging my neck, and we doing stuff, goofing around. And we all cool, man. But Prince wasn't that dude. He had actually sent our publicist and said, Prince, I want y'all hanging out with the Aerosmith guys. And I'm like, man, I'm glad, man. He cool, man. I don't let nobody just, tell me what friends I can have. I mean, Steve was cool to me. I'm gonna be cool to him, and it was cool. And Steven and it came in, nobody's saying nothing, man. And I'm just sitting there dying. I'm like, oh my God. And he's like, yeah, and he's just talking and nobody's saying nothing. And I'm just like, okay. I'm like, oh my God, this is bad. I'm like, this is killing me. And I finally say, hey man, Steve, Joe, thank you, man. Thank y'all. I walk over and kind of like walk him out. Man, Prince was 38 hot. He's like, Morris. He's like, why did you do that? I'm like, Prince, you're killing him, man. I mean, he's in here, man. He's being contrite. He's like, Prince, man, you're the greatest. Him and Joe are like, yeah, and you ain't saying nothing, bro. You just like, and I'm like, I said, Prince, I couldn't deal with it. I was like, it was killing me, man. So I just had to end it. And he was like, ah.
That's so funny.
He wanted to jump
Did he
the light
change? Did he change over the years with that sort of slight awkwardness or the desire to
No,
be?
man, Prince was let me tell you something, man. This is one of the things I do love about Prince. He was a rock star's rock star. I remember we were at this place in LA, man. We were at this little called a Green Door or something like that in Hollywood. And it's Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. is there.
Robert Downey Jr.
This is after the first Iron Man, bro. He is the biggest thing in Hollywood right now. And I'm sitting there with Prince, we just sitting kind of chilling. And there's a bunch of celebrities hanging around. But I see Robert across the way. And he's talking to his friends and he's looking at Prince. Now I've seen this 1,000 times at this point. Like people that's like talking, and you can tell they're talking about us. And they're looking and he's like, and he looks at Prince and like, so he's telling his friends, I'm gonna go over there. And I'm like, uh-oh, here we go. And he's like, no, this is Tony Stark over there, man. He's chilling. And so I'm like, uh-oh, he's gonna come over. And he's telling his friend, and they're egging him on, like, yeah, man, go and talk to him, Now at this point, Prince has told Trevor, he told our bodyguard dude, like go get the car and let me know when the car's here, come get me. So when they come and tell him the car's ready, when Prince gets up, it is a beeline straight to the car. He don't stop and shake hands. He ain't trying to say, hey, what's up? He just gets his cane and he's got his shades on, and everything is a straight shot to the car. I'm out of here, kind of deal. When Tony Stark decides to get up, when Robert decides to get up and comes over, his timing was bad because when Trevor gave him the word, Prince gets up, takes off. Robert walks up, hey Prince, I just want to, and Prince walks right by him with his hand sticking out, like pew, just right on by. And then all of Robert's friends are over there laughing, they're dying, man. They're like, oh my God, he just went right past him and left him with his hand sticking out like this, just like poof, smoke, and he's gone. And so now Robert Downey's like all hurt, man. It's like you can tell his little guts fell out. He was just like, really? I'm Iron Man, bro. And it's like, you just left me hanging. And I told, so Prince goes out. His assistant at the time was this girl Ruth. Ruth comes in and I said, hey Ruth, I said, Robert over there just tried to, holler at Prince real quick, and he just got shot down. And she says, oh, invite him to the house. We're having a party tonight. Invite him to the house, and it's cool. Prince had to just take off. That's what I know the drill. So she said, yeah, just invite him to the party, and it's cool. I said, okay. So I go over to him and I say, Robert, I say, hey man, I'm sorry about that, man. Whenever Prince is on, he said, oh no, it's cool, man. It's like, no, it's fine. I said, well, we're having a party. If you want to come, no, it's fine. No. And his friends are just like, they're dying, bro. And he is hurt, man. And I was just like, God dang it. Prince just shot Iron Man down, man. And I'm just like, dude, this is, but he's always been like that. It's always, if he was in a room with a room full of stars, he was the biggest star. Paul McCartney came to our table. Whitney came to our table. Everybody came to our table. Prince didn't go to nobody's table. You know what I'm saying? That's just who he was, man. I always appreciated that about him because I'm like, man, this is a rock star, man. This dude is a rock star. And he just looked at himself like that, I always loved that about him.
What Morris, I think we have to get Chappelle involved here and get you to film these, because this is Charlie Murphy's Stories Part 2, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and I got a million of them, man, because I spent so much time. And it's funny, man. I'm actually thinking about writing a book about. I start compiling a list. Now I have two books on that. One is called A Ticket, but the other one is I'm thinking I got a working name called Mr. Hayes Among the Stars. And what it is just these anecdotes, these little stories like this of all the celebrities, man. It's the nuttiest thing because when I started compiling it, I just said, okay, I'm gonna just every time I think of the names, I'm going to just take a like a thing like this, and then I'm just going to write the names down.
Wow.
And they're all like, like some heavy duty folks. I can't get it to be clear, but I can't get it to be clear.
That's probably for the best, isn't it? You'd be inundated with people.
It's just so many celebrities and so many actors, and the Will Smith, like everybody that is that we've come across. And I have all of these wonderful stories. I don't see. My thing is this, man. There are some celebrities that like not so great stories, but for those who, and I'm not about disseminating anything that's like, I'm not the guy for the raunchy and for the negative and anything like this. All of the stories I have are these wonderful stories, like with Paul McCartney, where I'm sitting there at the party and Paul decides to come over and talk to Prince. And as he's walking by, Paul, he's a friendly guy. He walks over and he's just kind of, I'm sitting right here and Briz and Prince and Cedric the Entertainer sitting right here. And he just kind of walks by and he kind of puts his hand on your shoulders. He's walking by. When he puts his hand on my shoulder, I'm like, that's a Beatle. Beatle right there, dude. Got his hand on you. Like that, man, because it's freaking Paul McCartney, man. It's like, God dang, that's a Beatle. That's got his hand on your shoulder. And he asked Prince, he said, Prince, he said, understand you've been doing my song, The Long and Winding Road with Elton. I'd love to get a copy. And Prince is like, yeah, Paul, like, yeah, we'll get that sent out to you, you know. And I'm like sitting there thinking, like, man, I'm tripping. I'm like, man, this is Paul McCartney asking us about a song we had played a couple, 2 or 3 times with Elton John. Elton would come up and do the Long and Winding Road with us, and Paul wants a copy of that. And I'm like, man, this is like getting Jacques Cousteau to clean your fish tank, man. This is crazy. It's like, this is crazy right here, man. And I'm just like, I'm sitting there like, oh my God, bro. I'm sitting here with Prince, Paul McCartney asking about Elton John. I'm like, man, I'm through, man. Y'all put me in the dirt. I'm straight.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that, man. It's like I got so many moments like that. It's just like you have to just sometimes you got to do that number right there because you're tripping. You know, I did the same thing with James, with Ron Wood and Rod Stewart. Our bodyguard kind of rough Ron Woods up, and it's just like I went and told Prince. He said, "What was that all about?" So I said, "Man, Aaron didn't know who Ron Woods was," and he kind of like shook him up a little bit. He says, "We'll go fix it, man." We go around the corner. Ron and his wife and daughter are there. Rod Stewart was there, man. So we just me and Rod and Prince and a couple of people and his daughter and stuff. And I used to wear these cuffs like Prince. And Ron's daughter said, "What is that? It's beautiful. What is that?" And I just gave it to him and said, "Hey, yeah, this is, you check it out." And Ron was like, "Hey, it's beautiful. Look, it looks great on it." I said, "Well, you can have it. It's yours." She's like, "Oh, really? Thank you." And it was like this whole thing, man. And it's like, I'm sitting looking at it. Like I said, where's the black and white photographer that get this black and white shot of Rod and Ron Wood and all us in there around this round table, man? I'm like, this is rock and roll, man. Like, this is, man, I'm like, I love it, man, because it's the stuff I used to look at in rock and roll magazines, and I used to see it. Now here I am, and sitting up, a little kid from Arkansas. I'm sitting up in the middle of this stuff, man. I'm a blessed brother, and I'm a humble brother because I know that could have been anybody in that position, man, and I was blessed enough to be able to like roll around with Prince and do stuff like that. And a lot of people that roll with Prince was able to do. They know different stars. And I just met the ones that I met over a 20-year span, and that's a lot of people, man. And we did a lot of David Letterman and all of these different shows like that, where just a lot of people, a lot of celebrities came to our shows. And so, man, we just met a lot of people like that. I met Trump like that. I mean, and so, which I had no problem with Trump. I was like, man, he told me he wanted to shake my hand. And I said, "I thought you were a germaphobe. You didn't shake hands." He said, "Well, I'll shake your hand." And I shook his hand because backstage Whoopi and hanging out at the Madison Square Garden. We were doing those shows. And I'm like, I mean, he's a playboy, like billionaire guy. I mean, I'm like, cool. He's at the show. It was like awesome. You know, I didn't have a problem until he got in politics. And, that's when it got to be an issue for me. But I'm just saying that happened on the norm all the time, all of these different people. And I was grateful to like meet all of the folks that I did. And these are nice stories. That's a nice story about Mr. Trump, because he was nice to me. I was nice to him. You know what I'm saying? And it just rock and roll. And that's what the beautiful thing about music is. It just, all of that stuff puts everything on a kind of level playing field. I wasn't talking about politics. Everything's about music at that point.
Yeah.
And so I could address everybody as people, you know what I'm saying? And just like deal with them on a personal level, like aside from all of that stuff, man. And that's what I loved about it,
Do you ever give any time? Sorry, one last one, and then I think we're on Patreon now.
Yeah.
Do you ever give any time to thinking if you've taken a different road in life? Like, it's an amazing thing that you've been able to do in the life that you've had. Would you ever think, what if, and what would it have looked like?
I think about it all the time. One of my favorite movies when I was coming up was that movie. The movie with Jimmy Stewart. Is it
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. And I would think, I had a little brother that got killed early in my life when I was about 10 years old. I often think, because he was more musically inclined than I was, and we were all in a traffic accident together, and he died in it. And I often think, like, what would have happened? Because that day I wanted to die myself because I was holding his hand. And I didn't get killed, but he got yanked out of my hand. and he did. And I just felt like I had failed him. So I wanted to die
Mm.
myself. And I actually went and laid out in the road to get ran over so that I could die too. And this is real talk, man. And so that didn't happen. The guy that actually swerved and missed me was the guy who went called. He got me up and went to these people. This is back in 1973. There were no cell phones. You had to go to somebody's house and have them call the police. And that's what he did. You know, I was not to die that day, or any day for that matter, as I'm still here. But uh, I often think, what would have happened had I not did this or not did that? What would the situation be? You know, my brother was a better musician than me. I was more into sports like basketball and stuff, and I didn't get into music until after. You know, he was kind of like into it. So I often think like, what would he have been the one to do this? And I thought I would be an artist, and I thought that would be the case. So yeah, I think about it, man. Like, what would I have done had I not done this? Where would I be? You know, and I think about it sometimes. I do know this. This is the only thing that I've ever loved, and that I've only done since I've been a professional, is I've made my career, my life doing music in some form or another. You know, when I first was
Is
starting out,
that
I did. Go
is
ahead.
that your way of maybe carrying him with you because music was his passion?
It is. I think about it a lot, and I think that is one of the things that I always think about, is that, you know, I always think like God put this, because it was too many things, man. It just was too many things that fell into the right places. That's all it could be, to me. It's like it can only be God directing my path in that way, because it just was too many things. It's like when I watch one of these movies, like I just went to go see John Wick, and it was crazy. And it just like when certain things happen, you go like, how did that guy just know to be up there with a rifle? And come on, man. But then when I think about it, it's the same thing happened to me. Like, certain things happened at the exact right time that made it possible for me to go to the next step. That just like you go like, dude, there's no way that somebody was just waiting in the bushes to shoot the guy right before he stabbed him in the neck. Like, it's just like that kind of stuff. It's just not as serious as that, but just things that happen along the way that just says, you got a fork in the road, you're going to go left or you're going to go right on this fork. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing that made it like, made me think about, I'm supposed to be here. Too many times I've been on either flights, I've been robbed at gunpoint twice, and yet I walked away with my life on all of these things. That means I have a mission. I'm on a mission. I have something that I'm here for, a reason to be here. And
Mhm.
I always think about that, man, whenever something like that, and it gave me peace. And in the times that I knew I was going to die, I didn't have that fear that you have when you're going to die, man. I just was able to just understand, like, if this is, I've eluded death so many times that if this is my time, I'm okay with it. I'm ready to go. If that's what it is, you know, if that's what it is, I always wondered how I would react in the face of death. And I wasn't disappointed enough, man. I've been disappointed with myself for a lot of stuff, but that
Wow.
wasn't one of them, because I was at peace with it. Because once I resolved to the fact that, hey, I'm gonna see my little brother, I'm gonna see my grandma, whatever it is, I'm good, man.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those things. But it's a good question. I never really get a question like that, but it's a
Yeah.
great question, and I think it just helps me understand my destiny. You know.
And that was an
Well,
amazing
thank you for
answer.
being so open.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll squeeze
yeah.
in a few more
You know,
Patreon questions.
just sorry, Brian. I know I keep holding you up from the patrons, but just to say on that, Morris, the one thing that Brian and I have realized when we speak to people, everything is made up about Prince because obviously he's this mega star, right? And he's
Sure.
the captain of the ship. But it's no accident the people who have come through the bands and the people he surrounded himself with. I think that there are bigger things at play that brought so many special people into his orbit. And I think there's
Sure.
an argument to be made that he was brought into some very special people's orbit. And I think that's the thing that we take
Absolutely.
from a lot of these interviews is that, there's a lot of incredible people. You're one of them. I mean, it goes without saying. I think every fan holds you with a dear place in their heart. But I just wanted you to know that was fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing
I
that.
I I I appreciate that, man, because you know one of the funny things that Prince did. Well, I don't know if it's funny, but one of the weird things that he did at the end, like it just had to be like, you know, I was only there till like 2012, and around 2011 somewhere, he came over to my house and just showed up, man. He just came and knocked on my door, and I opened it up, and it's Prince, you know, in Bria. And I'm like, hey man, what's up? Like, how you know? And he's like, so you want to come in? And I was making some food. Prince don't eat meat, you know. And so he says, no, I'll stay out here. And I just went out on my porch, you know. And he was wearing this long tunic kind of thing, looked like, you know, Jarrell from, you know, Krypton, you know, with this long thing on, you know, like Prince. I'm like, what's happening? And just came over, man. This dude got on his knee and kissed my hand, and like I'm like, what the hell is going on? And told me like, hey man, I wanted to apologize to you. Like I was really hard on you, and I really was tough. And he said, but I just wanted you to be great, and you are great. And I was like, wow. Um, and and he told me all this. He said, you introduced me to a lot of people that I love. He named off a bunch of names, Kieran Sharma and Tamar, and just named off all the people that I had introduced him to, Bria, and all of the people that I had introduced him to. And he said, he mentioned the fact that I talked to him about religion and that I told him about Muslim, the whole thing, you know, brought him into this whole understanding about at least what I had understood about the Muslim faith and Christian faith and all of these different things that we would talk about, that he would, you know, ultimately examine until he got to when he met Larry and got into the Jehovah Witness thing. But he thanked me for all of that, man, because I grew up in the church, you know, so, and I grew up around all of that type of thing. And so he just wanted to let me know he appreciated all of the input and all of the stuff that, you know, because Prince was a much bigger teacher to me than I think I was to him. But yet and still, he appreciated what I brought to the table, and he wanted me to know that, man. And it was kind of weird because I felt like, well, first thing I felt like is that I was looking around, and he was like, "What are you looking around?" I said, "Because I'm waiting for Ashton Kutcher to come up and say I'm punked." I'm like, I'm waiting for this dude to jump out of something. Because it was the weirdest thing to have Prince on my porch where everybody in my neighborhood could kind of see him, you know, and like looking out the window, like, hey, oh, what the hell is this Prince over there getting proposing to Morris on his knees? And I was just like, this is weird, man. And I remember getting off the phone. I was married at the time, and I remember calling my wife. I went in her office. Her office was like the first door, and I went in there and used her and called her and said, "You are not gonna believe what just happened." She's like, "What?" I said, "Man, Prince just came over here, and just like it was weird, almost like he was getting ready, like he was saying goodbye or something, because it was just like he told me all of this stuff and how much he loved me and how much he loved the people that I introduced him to. All of this stuff, it was weird, like almost like he was saying, "All right, bro, see you in the next one," or something like that, because I just thought it was the weirdest thing ever that he didn't even tell me he was coming over. You know, he used to live across the street from me and would stop from time to time. But I'm just glad that Brill was there, because I wouldn't have believed it myself if I had a witness to what had happened that day. I would have been like, I don't even believe it. But she was there and saw the whole thing happen, and she just kind of stood there, kind of like she had a long little dress on and the white dress and looking very nice, and he did his thing, and she was there to witness the whole thing. And I'm just like, wow, this is weird, man. Like, it's crazy. I remember like kind of shedding a tear because I was so outdone by the whole thing. I just didn't know what to. And I told my wife, I said, man, this was crazy. Like I'm flabbergasted. Like it's like, wow, you know. But thank God it wasn't the end at that time. And but it was just a very strange thing. And I just like remember thinking like, wow, man, for him to come and tell me all of that stuff and apologize for how tough he was. But he was tough on everybody, you know. But for him to say that, I just was like, wow, man, this is crazy, man. Like, because I didn't think about it, man. I always knew. I heard from everybody that I talked to about Prince before I even met him that he's a tough guy. He's a hard guy in rehearsal. He's a hard guy with this, that. So that wasn't a shock to me. That's something I was used to even before I got with him. So I didn't expect it to be any different for me. You know, I just thought that's what it is. And so, yeah.
We you know, we've learned in our experiences with some of our interviews, talking to some of the people from Prince's past too, like it's no secret, you know, he was very demanding with what he wanted out
Yeah,
of you if you worked for him, right? And I think I always think of this humility, and I have it just quadrupled my respect for you guys because, like, you know, sometimes as musicians we put ourselves first with our ego, but I can be honest and say, you know what, Prince would have, you know, chewed me up and spit me out in 3 minutes. So for you guys to, and I mean that with all due respect to him, he's amazing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
to be able to that quote when you said I knew my place in the room, it just it told me a lot about your personality, your ability to deal with different personalities, your work ethic, your professionalism, because I think a lot of musicians would not have been able to work with him for whatever reason. So the people that could hang in there for a while, that says a lot to me about them.
yeah, yeah. Well, like I said, man, I realized that I had really, and I don't use the word luck. I don't like luck. You know, and you know, for anybody like I said, you know, that's just not a term we use. We practice. But I'm one of the most fortunate cats, and I realized that I was. I knew that there were greater players than me. I actually offered, you know, one of my favorite keyboard players of all time is Greg Fillinganes, man. And Greg called me after we did a show in LA and was like, Morris, he says, man, I played with everybody in the game. He says, the only cat I haven't worked with is Prince, man. I want to play with y'all. And I was like, sacre bleu. I'm like, oh my God, yes. I'm like, you know, and I called Prince like, Prince, you know, like I'm breathing hard. Prince, Greg Fillinganes wouldn't be in the band. You know, and Prince like, so like, I'm not, but it's Greg Fillinganes. You know, Greg Fillinganes is him. And he's like, I got you. And I'm like, yeah, but I ain't Greg Fillinganes. Like, you know, he's like, man, he said, Greg is dope, but they're all hired guns. It's like they just, you know, they go gig to get wherever the money is and what all this kind of stuff. He says, like, yeah, Greg's a dope guy, but I got you. And I'm like, yeah, but I ain't Greg Fillinganes, bro. I mean, that's Greg. You know? And he's just like, I like my own crew, man. I like people that's going to just like, you know, it ain't about what gigs we doing. Like we hang when we ain't working, you
Yeah.
know, and we here, you know, everybody's in Minneapolis, man. This is like family. So it's like we do music and we do, you know, life.
Yeah.
And so that was the way he was like that, man. And it was just like, wow. And that was like crazy to me because I'm like, dude, that's one of the greatest dudes in the history of the game. And he was like, yeah, but I got you. And I'm like, which who wants that? I mean, like, you got great.
But
So
that's one heck of a compliment.
just once again,
Yeah.
it's a heck of a compliment, man. And that's what I'm saying. That's why I love this brother forever, man. Because, like I said, I could have easily been replaced. Chucky Booker, like some of the cats that I could call them, and I offered up these guys when I left the first time and said, well, Prince, if you want Chucky, which I know Chucky, and blah blah blah. And he's like, oh no, man, you know, you're my guy, and I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
like that's crazy, you know.
Well,
So
I find it crazy that to hear you say this. Though. I mean, I've heard Eric Leeds say the same thing about like David Sanborn. Why didn't he pick him? And then when Maceo joined the band, he's like, well, there you go. That's the guy you should have had all along. You know, but the reality is that I don't think it would have worked necessarily having these guys.
no,
You know,
no,
as much as
no.
they
And
are
I'm gonna
great
tell you something.
musicians,
Eric
I think
Leeds,
he was right.
yeah, but that's the thing. Prince was always crew oriented, and I'm sorry. This has been a good interview, but I'm gonna have to flip my earpieces because these just died. So hang on
okay.
one second.
Okay.
Okay, let's see if this works any better. I just had to put some fresh ones in. Let's see. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
That
no
was with the
problem.
contingency. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Okay, great. So Eric was, you know, it's the thing is though, man, Prince has always been crew oriented. He wanted his own crew, his own people, and Eric was, you know, him in Atlanta were just crazy. Like I did a thing with George Clinton once at the Glam Slam, and I sat there while we were rehearsing on the stage for the thing while Eric in Atlanta set up and rearranged all of those horn parts for every song with the two of them, revoiced everything, and it was unbelievable what they were able to do. Eric had a thing that was his own thing that was just like, yeah, there's Maceo, yeah, there's some of these other cats, but this is one of the coolest dudes that he had a great look, he had a great vibe, and he could kill, absolutely kill. The only thing that would happen with Eric sometimes is him and Prince were just like, they were like this. They both kind of halfway hated each other, but they were both so good they had to deal with each other. Because every time Eric got a chance to kind of stab him, he would, and every time Prince kind of get his, he would. But he knew that they were both at the top of their games. You know what I'm saying? And he had respect for Eric because he was that cat. You know what I'm saying? And so did I. I love whenever I got a chance to play with Eric because he's a beast of a horn player. He's got his own tone. He's got his vibe and like that. And he's a sarcastic fuck, but he's a dope cat, man. He's just a
Are
dope
there any
dude, and you
others?
can't say nothing.
Are there any other band
Huh?
members that are proper beasts that you think are undervalued by the fan
Oh
community?
man,
'Cause I think Levi
Prince
is
had
like super talented. Yeah.
Prince told me about Levi. He told me one time about Levi when I first got in the band. What he said about Levi, he said I like Levi because he's like the other side of my brain. He says. He says whenever whatever lick I'm thinking to do, whenever he'd break down where it's him and Levi, they automatically knew where to go on each other. And he says that's what I like about Levi. He says he's just the other half of my brain. He just plays exactly what I think ought to be there. And then he told me about Sonny. He said Sonny, what I love about Sonny. And Sonny used to beat Prince up in school. Prince told me a story about how him and this guy named Daryl Boudreaux used to basically take turns beating him up. And it's almost like you beat him last week, right? So I got him this week. But I said, so and he's in your band. But the bottom line, he said, the thing about Sonny, he said, Sonny is a computer. He said, we put in him, he spits it out. It's just like he's a computer. And he's just like, and he told me at the end, man, Prince got this powder blue Stratocaster. And he was showing it to me, and he told me, he says, "Man, I always wanted a Strat like this." He said, because he said Sonny had one when we were growing up, and he said I always wanted that guitar. It was one of the most beautiful guitars. He said it's like this powder blue with this white pick guard. He said I just love that Strat, and he said when I got this one, he said I named it Sonny. And Sonny wasn't playing with him at the time, and I called Sonny and I said, Sonny, man, I said Prince just got this blue Strat, man, this powder blue Strat, and then he named it Sonny. And I was like, what? I said, yeah, man, he named this guitar after you, man. Prince played that guitar to the end, man. But he told me, he said I always wanted one, and he said I finally got this one, like just like Sonny used to have. And he said, I said, man, I said, Sonny, that's a hell of an honor, bro. This dude named one of his guitars after you. And that guitar probably now is worth $1 trillion. It's just like, and just to have that happen, despite the fact that he used to have that tumultuous relationship with Sonny. He said Sonny taught him a lot of stuff. I remember when Prince said in an interview, they would ask him like, "Who's your hero?" Like, would it be Jimmy or whoever? And he said Sonny, and they're like, "Who is Sonny?" They're like, he said Sonny. That's where I learned from.
Yeah.
Prince told me he used to look in his window in his basement and watch Sonny. Him and Andre would watch Sonny through the basement window, and then Sonny would like, "Come on in here," kind of thing. And that's just incredible to me, man. It's just like the history of the Minneapolis Sound and all of those guys and how all of that with Flight Time and with Morris Day and all of this stuff worked out. As an outsider coming in, it was amazing to hear these stories like folklore and how uh, just like all of these, it's just like the beginning of like the Hobbit or something, man. It's crazy.
So, Morris, we really appreciate your time. It's an amazing conversation. I'll just squeeze in a few Patreon questions.
Sure.
Yeah, one from a man named Biggs, not Biggs, Briggs. So I don't mean me. A
Okay.
man named Briggs, Tony. He wanted to know what the first concert you ever went to was.
My first concert was James Brown.
James Brown. And
My mom James Brown. Yeah, it was my brother's 17th birthday, and she took me and my brother to see James Brown in Little Rock,
Oh,
Arkansas.
awesome.
What lineup?
It
Is
was
that
Maceo
Boosie
and
era?
Fred, and there was
Okay.
Maceo and Fred and those guys, and I think Melvin was playing on drums at the time. And I think Maceo told me that's when I think when he met his wife, she was one of the dancers. And
Wow.
because I told Maceo about it when I started playing with Maceo, I told him, I said, man, my first concert, man, was James. Y'all came to Little Rock, man. And I told him about this one particular part in the show where James Brown, they had turned on these strobe lights. And James was doing this thing in these strobe lights. It was like the wildest thing I'd never saw strobe lights used at a well, I've never been to a concert. So they used it, and James just looked like he was just moving like a robot. It was just the craziest thing. And I just remember telling Maceo, like, yeah, Mace, then y'all turned on the strobe light. And then James Brown, he did a jump in the air with a split. And it just looked like it was slow. I saved up enough money to buy my own strobe light, man. When I was a kid, I'd saved up enough money and bought a strobe light and turned the lights off my room and then just mess with the strobe light, man. Like I had this thing and it just did like this whole thing, man. It was a very influential concert for me to see James Brown. That was my first concert.
One for Tracy Norman. She wanted to know what your favorite Prince song and album are.
Well, there's two songs that I get that question a lot, and two of my favorite songs to play, and they both kind of came off the same album, which is a shock because Prince has many, many great records, man. It's hard to pick, but I do so love, for whatever reason, I love "Question to You." It's a song he does. It's only one verse, and then it's just this incredible guitar solo, and this background claps and choral thing that he does, and it's like one of my favorite tunes. And the other songs on that same album. And Prince, of course, has "Sign of the Times," which everything on that record slaps. Like everything on that record is crazy, and so many other. 1999 was crazy, but "Joy and Repetition" and "Question to You" are like two of my favorite songs to play because it's like I can visually I can close my eyes and I can see just him telling this story about this and "Joy and Repetition." I can see it just like Dorothy Parker's one of my favorite songs, and I can see this story that as he lays it out, and I asked Prince one time about what he thought he was the best at, and he told me he says he says he says Morris, at the end of the day, I'm a poet, I'm a songwriter. He
Hmm.
says I hate bad lyrics, and he says I think I'm a bit better as a lyricist. And I said, you know what, Prince, I'm 100 with that, man. I completely agree that lyrics is the best thing that you do because I go through some eras where I didn't like the keyboard sounds. I'm a keyboard buff, so I didn't like when he just used one keyboard to do every part on the record. It just like to me, but it's like if I take away the music on any of his songs, I don't care whether I like the music or not. If there's some stuff I like, I love some stuff, not so much. But if I take away the music, all of it's great because he always got something to say lyrically. That's every song has a different thing that it does in a piece. He told me Morris, every song should have at least one special thing. It should have something in it that's special, and that was his lyrics. And he could take anything I could peel away if I read because we used to get lyric sheets. For me, it was important because I needed to know when I'm playing vocal samples and I'm doing stuff. I had to get the lyrics in my head, and I would read all of these lyrics because on some of the old stuff, I'm like, I don't know what this means. Like, what does "Purple Rain" mean? Like, they have to really get deep into like what does that mean? And so sometimes, in order for me to kind of get it, I need to look at the lyrics and just like read it as a piece of poetry. And that's what you could do with Prince's music. You could just read it and understand that this is a cat that's thinking about. I don't like bad lyrics, Morris. I don't like bad lyrics. This bothers me. And so he spends the time to make sure that that's right. And I think that's one of the things that pops for me.
No
People often
names.
ask,
Oh,
sorry, can I just jump in?
yeah, yeah, of
People
course.
often ask the question, how much of how much is in the vault? And the question that I like to ask to people who are around him is, how much of his talent have we heard? Because there might be 1,000 other
It's
songs in the vault, but
it's
it might be the same
it's
vocabulary.
still this is the thing. There's been a lot of bootlegs. There's been a lot of stuff, and a lot of people think there's not much left. There's a lot of stuff in the vault. I used to go in there and just look around. Uh, Back when I used to go in the vault, then toward the end, it got to where he just went in the vault. But back when I would go in there with the engineers and just look at stuff, I'd just be like, "What is all of this?" He had filled the vault up back in the '90s. There wasn't any room. There was stuff on the floor, stuff all over the place. And then it got into the pre-vault, which wasn't like airtight and managed like the vault was. The vault was like hermetically sealed, and so you don't have this oxidation that happens with a lot of these tapes. But man, it got beyond that and just started stacking up all out in the pre-vault where a lot of his awards and plaques and stuff like that. He didn't have room for all that stuff. So he just had a room that just put all these gold records and platinum records, all of this stuff over here in the corner, put the tapes in the corner, and just like stuff was everywhere, man. There's a ton of stuff in there. Not only that, Prince recorded like rehearsals, shows, like all of this stuff, man. That all of them's different. He can put out stuff for the next decades, man. To me, that's what of the stuff that I managed to see, and I didn't see everything because I wasn't up in everything. But I mean, I saw what I saw, and it was a lot. So, man,
I've
they could
heard you
curate
talk
stuff out
about,
of there forever, man.
yeah, I've heard you talk about Crystal Ball, where he played that to you, and you were like, "Who's playing the drums? That's me. Who's playing the bass? That's me." Do you think there's
Yeah.
anything in the vault that you're aware of that would kind of show the level of talent far in excess of what we've already had?
I think so. I think there's stuff in there like that because he went and pulled that record out and just blew me away, man. Because I knew he was dope. I mean, I knew Prince was cold and everything, and could really, but I just had no idea uh, when he played that song because the long version is just changing like tempos and everything is just flowing like this, and it's just like I'm like, Prince, how do you do that? This song's like 10 15 10 12 minutes long or something like this. I'm like, so you played all the way through with the drums, and he just and all the way through with the bass, blah 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 blah. And he says everything is done in my head, Morris. He says I see it finished and it's all in my head, so all I'm doing really is executing. I'm just executing these parts that I have in my head. I know how it's supposed to go. So I can play the drums for 15 minutes and then I can play the bass for 15 minutes and I know that's all going to fall in. I've watched him do it, man. And I'm like, man, this is, and so a lot of people throw the genius word around pretty loosely. I'm telling you, man, based on what I saw of this dude, he is a freaking genius. He is the Mozart of our, that's what I came to the conclusion. I used to talking to him about what's his favorite movies and stuff. He told me his favorite movie at the time. But one of the first time I asked him, it was Amadeus, and I had never seen Amadeus at that point. And I went back and looked at it, and I said, "Oh snap! This I totally get it. Why that's his favorite movie. That's him. That's the whole." I said, "That's him. I get it. It's that movie." Then when the Matrix came out, that was his. He got on the Matrix tip because now he's coming into the awareness of the society and the world. So that became his new thing was the Matrix, because he really loved that the Wachowski brothers and how they were breaking down this movie. So I completely get it. But Amadeus, man, he said that's his favorite movie. And when I watched it, I was like, oh my God. And he told me his favorite scene was when he's like, this is what I think you mean when you and played the guy's song because he was as he was walking in, he's memorizing and so he's like, yeah,
Yeah,
I would like you to hear this. He said, yeah, I heard it already when I was walking in, and then
yeah,
just played
familiarity.
it. I, I was like, oh my God, that's Prince. He said, this is what I think you mean, And I said, yeah, that's a Prince. I went back to him after I saw it. And I say, bro, now I know why that's your favorite movie. I said, that's because that's you, just like that.
Yeah.
So our Patreon No Names, he has a question for you. He really likes the song Chlorine Bacon Skin. He wanted to know your thoughts on it.
You know, personally, Prince played that song for me too, man. When we were working on the Crystal Ball record, and he played it for me, and he would do this personality. I used to come like he's tricky, or he had these different personalities that he would the personas that he put on. And one of the funniest parts about it, he would play me the part where at the beginning of the song where he starts to play the drums and then he like drops the stick or he does something and it stops and then the groove comes back in. He played that like 5 times, man, and we just crack up laughing. And then he's just talking, yeah, don't you like me? And all of the stuff that he's doing in it, and it was hilarious, just and he really loved that, man. Like I remember we were working on Exodus. We left. We had been working on stuff, man, and we left and came back. Prince had did about 5 or 6 of these segues, man, where he's doing all these voices, and we like, what the hell? Like, what is all of this? Hey, yeah, the mashed potato girl and all of this, and it was just like he just loved doing these little voices, and this Italian guy, he's doing this, and he had me do it. I'm Montalvo, and I'm doing all of this stuff. And it was like comedy, man. It was just funny for us, man. And it's just like we love that because we get to laugh at ourselves and have fun like kids, man. We used to, man, Prince, we used to run up and down the hall like we was kids, man, at Paisley Park and be at the movie theater. He rented the theater out. I remember we rented the theater out and we were watching what is the scary movie. And Carmen was in this movie. And I don't think he knew that the scene where he's tied up in the chair was in the movie. And, because when it got to that part, me and Kirk were there with him. And I think my team may have been there at the time, I think. And man, when it got to the part where he was sitting out there in that chair, dude, we took off running down the aisles of the movie theater, man, like just running and hollering and screaming because we were dying laughing. And he was so shocked. Excuse me. So shocked. He just had that look on his face like, we're like, it's you. And it was just, man, we just like kids, man. And it's just like that kind of stuff, man, I'm telling you, is the stuff that I really, really, truly miss. Because it's just like, man, we just like a bunch of kids, man, and just goofing off and watching television and seeing things, like all of the stuff we would do. And it was hard work. It was tough days, but it was a lot of happy days, man, and a lot of cool moments like that,
man. If you do write that book of the anecdotes, can you intersperse those types of stories where it's not about the celebrity, it's these little sort of personal moments?
That's what the book, what the thing with my book, The Ticket, is about. It's just about a kid from the middle of nowhere who had a dream. I went to see a show. I still have that ticket in my pocket, in my wallet, to where I went to see that show, and said that day that that's my destiny and that's what I intend to do, and that's what I did. By the grace of God, I went in and I did that, and what it's about really, and Prince is involved at the level of he was the catalyst for the dream, and I just want it to be about you can make it if you try. We used to talk about song titles, and Prince was all into that because we love Sly and the Family Stone. He said, look at the song titles we have today, and look at what we used to listen to when we were coming up, Morris. He said, you can make it if you try. Everybody's a star. Stan. He just would name off these songs by all the different artists like James and I'm Black and I'm Proud. And he would name off these titles, man, and just kind of what we, WAP, what we got now. And not to knock on nobody, man. Art is art. And Prince was all about, Prince was a racy artist himself. He got, Tipper Gore going after him about getting them banned out the stores. So he knew about racy. And so we see, and he don't seek to encroach on anybody's art, but we just saying we want to come from a place of positivity and talk about things that uplift people. And when he talked about Sly Stone Larry Graham, and a lot of the people that we listened to back in the day. Because we talk about how when we heard that there was an album coming out, we'd be waiting at the record store to open up just so we could get those records, man, because we knew that there was going to be something special when Stevie came out with something, or James came out with something, or Sly came out with something, or Graham, Shaka. Those were all our heroes and all the people that we loved and that we respected, and that we wanted to hear that music, and so that was just a thing for us, man. And I appreciated that too, because I thought about it too, like Stan and all of those song titles, man, and what they were talking about. So that's what we wanted to emulate, and that's the stuff we like. And we like George Clinton because George was like, Prince always talked about how the difference between Clark Kent and Superman. He said, look at Superman. He don't wear his Clark Kent clothes when he go do work. He look like something different. He look like something elevated because he don't look like everybody else. And he's got powers above and beyond. And he looks like that. This dude got a red cape on. He's flying around in some underpants and some boots. That's how Prince wanted to always approach music, from a standpoint of like, he said Morris, because I'm a simple guy, man. I drove my little 4-wheel drive and do my thing. And Prince is like, he said, you're a rock star, bro. And I'm like, me, a rock star, man? For real? I'm like, I'm not a rock star. You're a rock star, but I'm not a rock star. He's like, yeah, you are. You're a rock star. And he says, so I want you to think like a rock star. I want you to act like a rock star. I want you to look like a rock star. I don't wear blue jeans around all the time. But I'm like, I got to go to Target, Prince, sometimes. I can't wear what you wear to Target. You know what I'm saying? But he was right in a lot of regards. I don't mind. Prince put on the Superman suit and never put the Clark Kent suit back on. He just stays Superman. I have to be Clark sometimes, and I have to go back and forth because I like my anonymity. I like being to go places and nobody know who I am. And that's cool for me. Sometimes I can get on the stage and I'm cool, and then I go home and nobody know. I'm okay with that. That's been my thing. But I do understand what he meant. I do understand that is the life of a person like him. Michael Jackson couldn't walk out in the public. He had to dress up in all these funny costumes and outfits. But I always came to know that when I decided I wanted to do this type of work, that was the pirate's life for me. And I was going to have to deal with what comes with being in that type of scenario. And be at a restaurant sometimes, somebody come up to me, man. This is so weird, man. I was just in Seattle like a week and a half ago, and I got a shoulder issue that's like frozen shoulder kind of thing. And so my executive producer, Zoe, had this stuff that I had hurt my shoulder. I'm like, oh my God. She said, Morris, I got this stuff on my knee. She put this stuff on me and it just instantly stopped what was hurting. And I said, where did you get, oh my God, what is this? And she said, it's some kind of like CBD, something. So I said, Zoe, I don't know what this is. I got to have it. Where in the world did you get it? We go over to this place, man. And there's some kind of, like a place where I've never been to a dispensary before, like in a dispensary. So you have to have they have like a security person. You have to have ID, and you go through this whole business. I go in there, man, and get some shoulder medication. 2 seconds later, the security guard that's like checking me and checking our ID to let us in and everything. He comes up behind me like, "Are you D. Morris Hayes, to play with Prince and George Clinton?" Yeah, like I knew it, man. I knew it, bro. Like I got a band, and I was like, dude, this is so wacky to me because I don't even be thinking like that, man. I'm just in here getting some arm sad, man. And this dude is freaking out, man, because he's like, I knew it was you. And Zoe's like, what the? Like, can I take you anywhere, bro? Like, I'm like, that don't happen to me all the time. And I just kind of forget sometimes about that aspect of my life. And I'm just a customer getting some for my shoulder. And he freaked out, man. And it's just like sometimes you just have to go like, God, dog, I guess Prince was right. Like, I'm in Seattle. It's like, I'm disconnected, man. And he's like, can I take a picture? I said, yeah, sure. In front of the sign. I'm like, no, I don't endorse the pot placement. Sorry, bro. But it just was one of those reminders of what he always told me. He said, man, you can go anywhere. And this is your life. This is what happened to you. We used to go to clubs and just watch the crowd. He called it vortex energy. He said, just watch. You're gonna sit here, Morris, and just wait for a few minutes and watch what happens to the club. And sure enough, people would be spread out when we first get in. In a few minutes, the crowd is just slowly trickle in. And so now there's this entire crowd of people that are looking at us like fish in a tank. And it would happen everywhere we go. And he said, that's just vortex energy, Morris. That's just what it is. You're a rock star. I said, man, Prince, it ain't me, it's you, dude. Ain't nobody checking for me. They all checking for you. But that's just, he's just trying to convince me this is the life we live. And this is what it is. This is, brother, this is rock and roll. Thank you, good night. So that,
When you're in Ace, when you're in Ace Hardware in Chanhassen, the vortex happened around the lock section.
But nobody was bothering me. It didn't get to be a situation until he came in with his furry boots and turtleneck. That's when it got out of hand. So that's why I'm saying. That's why my argument to him, like, see, I can go anywhere and it's fine. It's just when you come in, we get the drama. So that's all that was, man. But it's still great, man. I wouldn't change it for anything, man. It was an incredible time in my own life. It changed the trajectory of my life. Prince took care of me, and I took care of my family, and I'm forever grateful for that. Because he didn't have to do it, man. I'm the worst keyboard player this dude ever had. But I can tell you this, he kept me around a long time. I don't know exactly why, but he did. And I'm just grateful for that. Whatever the reason he had was, like, you're a puppy in the woods. I got to look after you more. You'll get chewed up if I don't. I don't care what it was. I'm just grateful that he did. I'm honored and grateful.
Well, I have two.
I think everyone watching would know.
Yeah. I have two last questions for you on my end.
Sure.
Morris, we have a mutual friend, Sam, and she wanted me to ask you, why did you always get picked to play drunk characters?
That is something because I never been drunk. I don't even drink. So that's the funny part about it. So I just always thought Richard Pryor was the greatest, the comic drunk. Well, not the greatest, because what's the one guy he only did like the drunk character all of the time? Gosh, what's his name? I used to love him because he would be the drunk in all his stuff, and he was just phenomenal from back in the day, back in the '60s, and he used to be on Johnny Carson a lot. But I always thought that was funny, and Richard Pryor he played a great drunk, and I used to sneak and listen to my brother's Richard Pryor when my mom and dad would leave, and my brother was at school or whatever. I listened to his Richard Pryor record, and whenever Richard Pryor would play the drunk dude, like, whenever he'd be the preacher or drunk, man, that's what made me love comedy, and that's what made Prince love comedy so much. And I would just listen to these Richard Pryor records, and him drunk, and then I just would incorporate that into my thing, like, and and just because they just get into this thing, and they're like, they mispronounce where Mr. Piss Officer, I just tell you this way, and everything, it just was great. And I just used to love it, man. It's because it was just funny to me, because I used to see a lot of drunk cats in the neighborhood, back in the day when there was a lot of us in town here. And cats would they get their little Friday night jam on. I used to own a pool hall, me and my brother. When we were kids at our old house, that was the way we made our allowance. And I used to make a bunch of money, man. I made like $600 a week. Back then, that was a gang of money, bro.
Oh, yeah.
Kids in school, I was in like junior high making, on an average $200 to $600. It was that much, 600 when we first started. Of course, as things tapered off, then the money would go down. But it was the only place in town that people come shoot pool, play pinball, and play the Seabird, man. That's what we call the juke. And that, and when we got that first take, and we made all that money, we were like, we're rich. It was just that much money on the first week. Whenever they would come and take the money out of the pool table and all those stuff, they get their split, and you get your split. And it was like me and my brother, our split was $600. I was like, oh my God, My dad, I don't even know if make that much money. So it was crazy, man. And so,
Yeah.
and that's another thing, we just, and I just used to love that, man. It was just funny. But yeah, man, that's why I guess I get the drunk rolls because I can play them pretty good.
Yeah. There you
Absolutely.
go, Sam.
This has been
Yeah,
fantastic.
Sam. I did it.
I think we've got enough questions for another round at some point down the line. What's next for you? Because I've had the privilege of seeing you. I kind of lost count, maybe 5 times with the MPG since Prince passed. I had the real privilege of sitting in on soundcheck in New York, and that was phenomenal to see that the work ethic that was instilled in you
Yeah,
guys, and I
cool.
think is naturally in you, is completely, absolutely still there. It was as if I was watching Prince rehearse that band.
Yeah.
Um,
What?
were you put some songs on SoundCloud? What are you working on outside
Yeah.
of the MPG stuff?
Well, I got this really dope song out right now with this girl, Lisa Dietrich. That's awesome, man. It's called Sugar, and it's on all of the platforms now. But it's got like 100, and last time I checked, like 130,000 views after about 2 weeks. I think it's been out about a couple weeks now, and
Okay.
it's a kind of a big band song that we did like almost 10 years ago, like 2013, 2014. And she and I started working on. Bette Midler liked it, brought it into a rehearsal to learn. Um, but we decided to just redo it this time with like a kind of a big band sound. I kind of molded the stuff myself when we wrote it, and but this time we decided we got Harvey Mason, senior on it, Chick Corea's bass player, like all of these people like that are on it. This guy Letty Garcia, Phil, our horn ranger for Prince, Phil is on there. Um, uh, Phil Lassiter. And
Yep.
so we just did it, man. And it's phenomenal. It's one of my best pieces of work. And Lisa, she brought this tune to me, and I just built it up, and we really made something special with this song, man. And it's a piece that I'm very proud of. It sounds like Big Boy. I love Jam and Lou. They're the two of my heroes and two of my mentors, and I always want to try to like do things on that level and like Prince and do things on that level. I feel like this is something that I can sit alongside of things that they do that's of quality, and I want to do work like that, and do quality work. And so it's just like I'm very fortunate, man. I got like an EDM thing I did with my guy David Alexander, who is a longtime friend of mine. And right now, I just had some Zoom calls today and yesterday. It looks like I'm going to Cambodia and I'm going to Pakistan to do. I have a thing called Global Groove for Peace that when I was living in China, I lived in Shanghai for almost a year, and I met a lot of people and I did some music, and I started like coming up as an artist myself. I never looked at myself like I could be my own artist. And living in China kind of like retooled my thinking about that. And I'm now working on my own records and to do my own show and things like this, and I'm working with the people in Cambodia. I'm working out to develop it all, but I'm writing music for like the princess of Cambodia. So
Wow.
it's really awesome, man, because all of this stuff is just kind of like baking right now. I'm probably speaking, too soon on it, but I'm just putting it in that it's like it's done, and I'm looking at it in a positive way that it's going to come to completion and come to fruition. And so, but it's funny too because there's a lot of uh, you things that kind of turn, that didn't go great. And there's been a lot of downtime with the MPG. There were some things, that we had to sort out with our naming situation. Like we had a license to use a name, and now, our time ran out for that, and now they're gonna do what they're gonna do with the MPG name and stuff like that. And so we just had to kind of pivot. We got a lot of music that we wrote in LA a year and a half ago, almost a couple of years ago now, and that we want to have come out. That we want that music to come out. That we did some good music that the MPG did. So it's a lot of things we got to kind of figure out and kind of do, man. But it's all good, because I think we got good stuff, and I'm just, just trying to keep a hustle, man, and just do what I've learned to do. Prince taught us all a lot of stuff. If we're not successful, it's not Prince's fault. It's our own fault for whatever we don't do. He gave us a name. People know Mr. Hayes because of my time with Prince. And I spent a lot of time around watching this man doing what. That doesn't mean I know everything. Obviously, I don't got hit records. So I don't obviously know what Prince, but I learned a lot. And so I want to take what I did learn. And a lot of it was just like sometimes when you live in the shadows of somebody so great, especially somebody like me, you don't feel confident about your own stuff. And I got to come out and do something behind Prince. You're like very cautious. Almost have a mentality of like, I'd rather not put nothing out than to have something out that sucks and then you just get lambasted for it. But I'm learning to just like, hey, you know what? Everything ain't for everybody. And just, somebody I've heard some songs that like I would have said is like poo poo and like, but somebody likes it and it speaks to somebody. And so I'm learning to just like trust the process, do what resonates with you, that from the heart reaches the heart. So that's what I'm trying to, indoctrinate myself with now. Even at this point, and as much as I've done, I have my own insecurities, I have my own self-doubts and things like that that I have to work through. And so what I'm doing now, whenever I talk about these types of things, what I'm trying to do is help somebody else to like, you know what, put all your fear aside, put all your other stuff aside. We just have to just keep it moving and do the best we can and try to enjoy your life, man. Life is short. Just put your music out. And everybody ain't gonna like it. Everybody don't have to like it. If you like it, then put it out, man. We don't need a record deal anymore. We don't, we got instant distribution on the internet. Everybody's got instant distribution and everything. You just don't have an advance. You don't have a promotion team. You have yourself and you have your voice. So put your stuff out, man, and let it do what it do. If you got 10 people that like it, there's 10 more than you have.
Morris, this was an absolute incredible time.
It's been awesome.
It maybe down the road we could revisit this again because I know both of us could keep asking you a lot of questions. So, so I'll do my sign off, and then I'll just get you to hang on for 1 second, and then we'll. All right. So again, big thank you to the Solitary Adventure as always, and again, Mr. Hayes, thank you so much for your time. It's greatly appreciated. And remember, guys.
Thank you, brother.
Practice hard, practice smart. On keyboard too, there, you keyboardists out there. No excuses. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Thank you.
Morris.
Thank you, brother.
Fantastic. Thank you so
guys.
much.
I appreciate you fellas, man. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for being so generous with your time and pushing through the tech problems.
No worries, man. We have been trying to
optic.
set this up, man. Thank you, Chris, Brian. I appreciate you guys' time, and like I said, anytime we do this, it's all good, man. I've had a great life, and if somebody can take away anything that's gonna help their situation as artists and move ahead, that's what it's all about. That's the reason why I'm happy to talk about stuff, is because there could be some people just like me to just say, "Hey, man, I'm gonna take a shot at it, man, and just go for it." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then that's worth it, man. So thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You stay in good health, and we'll see you down the road. Thanks, Morris.
Thank you, brother. Y'all take care, man. Yep. Peace.
Bye-bye.